Chapter 53-54. The reason why the bespectacled professor thought highly of Xue Jianfeng and even came forward to fight for him to be specially trained was not only because of his talent and strength, but also because his father was the vice leader of the sect. Once he could rope him in, with Xue Liping's connections, many things would be easier to handle, and it would save them a lot of trouble in the early stages of entering the immemorial underworld. Of course, Xue Jianfeng did not forget this most important task. In fact, from the first day he returned to the Snow Sword School, he had already been doing his father's work. It was just that this matter was of great importance, and he could not make up his mind until he saw how terrifying the center was. After all, this was a matter of life and death for their Xue clan. If they succeeded, then they would soar to great heights. But if they failed, then they would definitely suffer a huge loss. This was related to the future and fate of the entire clan, so Xue Liping had no choice but to be careful. Xue Jianfeng was not in a hurry. He knew that this kind of thing needed a process of acceptance. Besides, even with the center's methods, entering the immemorial underworld was not something that could be done in a day or two. During this period of time, they would at most send a small advance team over to get a feel of things. It was not the time to make a big move yet, so he was not in a hurry to get his father to choose a side. But now that things had happened so suddenly, and Bing Wuqing's sudden rise had completely disrupted their rhythm. She was a nascent soul realm old monster. In this situation, if they did not find the center to discuss this quickly, Xue Jianfeng felt like he was a rooster waiting to be slaughtered. If Bing Wuqing was unhappy, she could take his life at any time. Xue Liping hesitated for a moment with a gloomy expression, but finally stomped out and prepared to contact the center's advance team according to Xue Jianfeng's instructions. It was not that he did not believe in the center's strength. In fact, with Xue Jianfeng and Bing Wuqing as two living examples, he no longer had any doubts about the center's great strength. He just had not clearly weighed the pros and cons. Now that Xue Jianfeng was seriously injured, and Bing Wuqing was so overbearing, if he chose to retreat unconditionally, the other party would definitely take a mile after taking an inch. Xue Liping could see clearly that his future days would only get harder and harder. So, unless he gave up his son, Xue Jianfeng, and was willing to be a coward. Otherwise, he had no other choice. Looking at Xue Liping's back as he left, the corners of Xue Jianfeng's mouth curled into a strange smile for some reason. It wasn't because his father had finally made a wise decision, but because of Bing Wuqing. Indeed, Bing Wuqing, who had suddenly become a nascent soul old monster, was a huge threat to him. But at the same time, it also exposed the other party's background. Since he had betrayed the core, then no matter how strong he was already a dead man. Xue Jianfeng did not doubt this point at all. Although Xue Jianfeng's legs were heavily injured by the other party's merciless ice force, in reality, he couldn't help but feel excited and even elated. Bing Wuqing was a traitor. This meant that he had one less strong competitor in the fight for resources in the center. In terms of talent and strength, the others were no match for her. At the very least, he'd already become the only target that was worthy of the center's fostering, and the benefits he represented was obvious. To a certain extent, this was simply a blessing in disguise. North Island, Blue Cloud Sect. Under the gaze of a crowd of disciples, a giant snow eagle descended from the sky. Everyone looked at it and started talking about it. Although all the flying spirit beasts of the ancient sects were mainly spirit birds, that was only for the ordinary elders and disciples, and some of the higher-ups with special status. The flying spirit beasts they used were often the symbolic spirit beasts of their respective sections. For example, Hong Zijuan, the leader of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, rode on a spiritual eagle. Snow Eagle was the symbolic spirit beast of the Snow Sword sect in the Middle Island. Seeing Bing Wuqing dismount from the back of the Snow Eagle, everyone looked at each other. Although the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island and the Snow Sword sect in the Middle Island were both part of the 10 small sects and families, one belonged to the North Island Alliance, while the other belonged to the Middle Island Alliance. They had almost no contact with each other, and the higher-ups of the sects rarely visited each other. What was going on today? May I ask who you are? a supervising disciple walked up and asked. Snow Sword Sect. Bing Wuching said lightly. Hearing this name, everyone was shocked. Bing Wuching was a real celebrity in the small Jianghu of the primeval times. Back then, she was the most famous person in the Foundation establishment stage, and almost all the disciples of the primeval sects looked up to a genius. Even in this remote North Island, she was well known. But why would such an influential figure suddenly appear here? Your Excellency, what brings you to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island? The supervising disciple asked, neither servile nor overbearing. I'm here to see someone. His name is Lin Yi, and he's the primeval uncle master of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Bing Wuching spoke bluntly. Since she had come to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island publicly, there was no need for her to be secretive. Even if she publicly revealed her relationship with Lin Yi, she believed that Lin Yi wouldn't mind. Primeval Uncle Master? The supervising disciple was slightly stunned. He thought that since she had come from afar, she was most likely here to visit on behalf of the Snow Sword sect. He didn't expect that she was here to see Lin Yi. Is there a problem? Looking at his weird expression, Bing Wuching frowned. This. The supervising disciple hesitated. Nowadays, Lin Yi, the so-called primeval uncle master, was a highly controversial figure to the entire Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Because he stood on the opposite side of highest elder Qinjiu, except for Xianijia and the other disciples basically stayed away from him. After all, in their opinion, going against a nascent soul realm old monster was simply courting death, and there was no possibility of winning. Go and ask for instructions. I'll wait. Bing Wuching didn't know what happened to Lin Yi and the others, but judging from the supervising disciple's reaction, she had vaguely sensed that something was wrong. Of course, before figuring out the specific situation, she couldn't act rashly. She could only wait and see. All right. The supervising disciple didn't dare to be negligent. Even if Bing Wuching didn't say it, he had to report this kind of thing as soon as possible. How to deal with this uninvited guest wasn't something that a mere supervising disciple should worry about. Soon after, a few high-level gold core cultivators of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island hurriedly showed up. Their leader was none other than Lu Pingan, the direct disciple of highest elder Qinjiu. Chapter 53-55. After all, he was not only powerful and experienced, but more importantly, he had the solid backing of the highest elder. In this aspect, the other gold core stage seniors could only look up to him. Looking at this scene, Bing Wuching became more and more suspicious, because she didn't see Xianijia. Logically speaking, Xianijia was the one who had the closest relationship with Lin Yi among all the senior members of Green Cloud sect in the North Island, and he had also dealt with her before. Logically speaking, Xianijia should be the most suitable person to receive her at this time, so why didn't he even show his face? Bing Wuching, my little friend, you've come from afar. Please forgive us for not going out to welcome you. Lu Pingan smiled and cupped his hands in greeting, behaving extremely politely. At least from his point of view, he was already very polite. Even if Bing Wuching was also a golden core expert, she was still a junior to him. Addressing her as a young friend was already a form of flattery. Little did he know that Bing Wuching was not even in the gold core stage now. He wasn't giving her face at all, but was trying to flatter himself. It's okay. Bing Wuching didn't care about this at all. Her reputation meant nothing to her, and she had never considered such things. She went straight to the point and said, "Can I pay a visit to your Grandmaster Lin Yi now? May I ask if there's anything special, my little friend Bing Wuching? Is this your personal wish, or the wish of your sect?" Lu Pingan asked tentatively. Personal, Bing Wuching said directly. Lu Pingan raised his eyebrows, looked at the other gold core stage seniors beside him, and breathed a sigh of relief. If Bing Wuching came to visit Lin Yi on behalf of the Snow Sword sect, it would be a big problem for them. After all, it was likely that Lin Yi had a close relationship with the Snow Sword sect. If they wanted to deal with Lin Yi, they would have to consider the feelings of the Snow Sword sect. Fortunately, this was Bing Wuqing's personal matter, so there was nothing to worry about. I'm sorry, but Grandmaster Lin Yi is currently in seclusion. I'm afraid you've made a wasted trip. Please go back. Lu Pingan immediately asked her to leave without hesitation. Seclusion? Bing Wuqing frowned even more. If she hadn't sensed something strange just now, she might have believed it. But at this moment, his intuition told him that there was definitely a problem. As an expert, especially a super genius like Bing Wuqing, her instincts had always been extremely sharp. Not bad. Grandmaster Lin Yi has been in seclusion ever since he arrived here, and no one dares to disturb him. Hence, if my young friend Bing Wuqing wishes to visit him, I'm afraid you'll have to wait for the next opportunity, Lu Pingan said with an apologetic look on his face. He looked rather sincere. Unfortunately, Bing Wuqing obviously wouldn't give up so easily. He glanced at Lu Pingan and said, "Take me to the Ascending Heaven Cliff." Huh? Lu Pingan was stunned for a moment. The other party's tone really confused him. Rather than saying it was a request, it sounded more like a condescending order. Was there something wrong with this guy's brain? It was understandable that a talented genius like Bing Wuqing would be a little arrogant, but the problem was that this wasn't the Snow Sword sect, but the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. She had come all the way to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island to act like a tyrant. Didn't he think about the consequences of his actions? Moreover, even if Bing Wuqing's attitude was better and she made a request in a proper manner, Lu Pingan would never agree, because the request itself was already out of line. Although the Ascending Heaven Cliff was mostly used to imprison special people, it was a place of great significance to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Apart from the high-level Golden Core cultivators, even the disciples of the sect couldn't easily approach it, let alone open it to an outsider like Bing Wuqing. Moreover, Lin Yi was currently imprisoned on the Ascending Heaven Cliff. Now was the time for the standoff, so how could Lu Pingan allow an outsider like Bing Wuqing to see him? I'm sorry, but the Ascending Heaven Cliff is a forbidden area of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Even the disciples of the sect can't approach it casually. Your request is a little too much. If it weren't for the other party's identity, Lu Pingan would have definitely started to chase her away without hesitation. However, she was after all a genius who used to be unparalleled in the Snow Sword sect of the Middle Island. If he embarrassed her too much, it would be equivalent to humiliating the entire Snow Sword sect to a certain extent. He didn't want to cause such unnecessary trouble. The Ascending Heaven Cliff is a forbidden area? Bing Wuqing raised her eyebrows. The more the other party tried to deny it, the more suspicious she became. However, she couldn't just fall out with him before figuring out the specific situation. She glanced at Lu Pingan and said, "Does this mean you can't make the decision?" The corner of Lu Pingan's eye twitched, and an inexplicable anger rose in his heart. What kind of contemptuous look was that? She was too condescending. That's right. Lu Pingan still didn't fall out with her. Holding back his anger, he said, "If you want to let people enter the Ascending Heaven Cliff forbidden area, you have to at least have the right to decide. However, it just so happens that our sect leader and deputy sect leader are both busy, so we can't do it for the time being." Lu Pingan was already very well-mannered to be able to say this much. If it were anyone else, even if they didn't fall out with her face to face, they would definitely leave in a huff. "Bing Wuqing, you're just a new junior, why are you acting like a big boss here? What about the Grand Supreme Elder? Your Grand Supreme Elder should have the right to do so, right? Take me to him," Bing Wuqing said smoothly. What? Lu Pingan and the others were collectively dumbfounded when they heard this. They looked at each other for a moment, then said, "You want to see our Grand Supreme Elder?" "Yes, you're not going to tell me that your Grand Supreme Elder isn't here either, are you?" Bing Wuqing asked casually. "The Grand Supreme Elder is here, and he does have the right to do so, but he's the stabilizing force of our Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. How can you, an outsider, meet him just because you say so? Do you think that your Grand Supreme Elder will agree to meet anyone who comes and asks to see your Snow Sword Sect's Grand Supreme Elder? Lu Pingan's face was tinged with sarcasm, and the other Gold Core stage higher-ups also looked contemptuous. Was there something wrong with this guy's brain? Asking to see the Grand Supreme Elder as soon as he opened his mouth? Did he really think that the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island belonged to his family? That depends on who it is. Bing Wuching wasn't angry about this. People like her, who were extremely rational and pragmatic, rarely got angry with others. What was the use of getting angry? Besides, they were on a different level now, so she wouldn't get angry easily. Chapter 53-56. If you're here on behalf of the Snow Sword Sect, we can still consider it. But since it's your own business, there's nothing more to say. That's all I have to say. We've already given you and your sect a lot of face. Goodbye. What if I don't go? Bing Wuching looked indifferent. Hearing that, Lu Pingan and the others' faces darkened. Their tone changed, and they said, "Those who come from afar are guests. The Blue Cloud sect of the North Island is not a place without rules. But if you insist on challenging our sect's bottom line, don't blame us for being impolite." As soon as he said that, several high-level Golden Core cultivators immediately surrounded Bing Wuching. The other disciples of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island also became nervous. Without any orders, they spontaneously surrounded her from all directions. They all knew that Bing Wuching was a Golden Core expert. Under normal circumstances, ordinary disciples wouldn't dare to get too close to her. But this was the territory of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, and Lu Pingan and a group of even more powerful high-level Golden Core cultivators were here. Of course, they had nothing to be afraid of. After all, if a fight really broke out, they wouldn't have to do anything. At most, they would just support her. After the fight, they could brag to others that they had fought Bing Wuching. That would be a good topic of conversation. "I don't want to fight." Even though Bing Wuching said so, her hands didn't move at all. However, the materialized merciless ice force had already seeped out of her body in an instant. The group of Golden Core experts, including Lu Pingan, didn't even have time to react before a thin layer of ice covered their bodies. As for the ordinary disciples on the periphery, they weren't affected. If such a strong ruthless ice momentum was used on them, a large number of them would die today. That would be a massacre, and there would be no room for redemption. Even so, it was enough to frighten everyone present. They didn't dare to act rashly anymore. Especially the high-level Golden Core cultivators led by Lu Pingan. Although the ice only covered the surface of their bodies, it wasn't as serious as it was against Shui Jianfeng. However, their strength could not compare to Shui Jianfeng, a Golden Core perfection expert. The strongest among them was Lu Pingan. The strongest among them, Lu Pingan, was only at the peak of the late Golden Core stage. Being covered by the ice, everyone felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. The piercing coldness seemed to come from the depths of their souls, making them tremble in fear. Under such circumstances, they would be lucky if they didn't kneel down, let alone fight back. "You. What do you want to do?" Lu Pingan knew that he still wouldn't give up. Although he was as scared as the others, this was the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Even if Bing Wuching was really more powerful than them. He didn't believe that Bing Wuching would dare to make a move here. She would be making an enemy of the entire Blue Cloud clan of the North Island, or even the entire North Island Alliance. Who would have the guts to do that? "I've said it just now. I want to see your Grand Supreme Elder," Bing Wuching said impassively. "You think you can see him just like that?" Lu Pingan was so angry that he gritted his teeth. His current state was one of anger and humiliation. That's right, the other party's sudden move had indeed shocked him. He had initially thought that Bing Wuching was just a junior in the early stage of the Golden Elixir realm. He had not expected her to be such an expert. He finally realized that he had underestimated his enemy. But so what if he underestimated the enemy? Did he really think that he would be able to see the Grand Elder just by showing off a bit of his strength? What did this guy think the North Island Blue Cloud sect was? Did he really think that this was a place where he could behave atrociously? Bing Wuching glanced at him and said a few words, which was rare for her. People are generally divided into two types. Some people have foresight, and some people only realize it after a while. But I found out that you're the third type. What do you mean? Lu Pingan was stunned. I didn't realize it, Bing Wuching said impassively. Lu Pingan was speechless for a long time. They all said that Bing Wuching was a heartless person. Why was she so vicious today? Lu Pingan was about to retort when an inexplicable and powerful aura suddenly spread out from Bing Wuching. This time, everyone's expression changed at the same time. They were even more frightened than when they were frozen by the merciless ice momentum. This aura. She was clearly a nascent soul realm old monster. Lu Pingan almost peed his pants. The expression on his face was brilliant. He would never have thought that Bing Wuching, a young junior, was already a nascent soul realm old monster at the top. You're really Bing Wuching? Lu Pingan asked a stupid question subconsciously. Of course, the other party was Bing Wuching. Even if she didn't say her name, they could still recognize her. After all, she was the leader of the younger generation back then. The higher-ups of the primeval sects would more or less pay attention to her. However, Lu Pingan couldn't believe the fact that Bing Wuching had become a nascent soul realm old monster. After all, it was too shocking. Bing Wuching ignored him and said directly, "Do I have the right to see your highest elder now?" Everyone looked at each other, then turned their heads stiffly to look at Lu Pingan. When they were frozen just now, they thought that they could still fight with the other party with the advantage of numbers and home advantage. But now that they found out that the other party was actually a nascent soul realm old monster, this absurd idea was immediately thrown out of Java. Against a nascent soul realm old monster, it would be difficult to win even if there were another 40 of them, let alone the 4 Golden Core experts present. With the intrinsic difference between the Golden Core and nascent soul realm, it was not something that could be made up for with numbers alone. There was only one way to deal with a nascent soul realm old monster, and that was to let the nascent soul realm old monster of their own sect fight in person. It was also because of this that the status of nascent soul realm old monsters in the primeval underworld was so high that it directly became a key indicator of a sect status. There was nothing that could be done about it. An archaic sect with a nascent soul old monster as its overseer was indeed stronger than one without one. If they really fought, a nascent soul old monster was enough to annihilate any ordinary sect. These ordinary sects didn't have any means to fight back, so what could they do? I didn't expect your excellency to already be the highest elder of the Snow Sword sect. We've been disrespectful. Lu Pingan's expression was extremely ugly, but he had no choice but to force a smile. He smiled apologetically and said, "The highest elder is the highest representative of a sect. Since it's a matter of the highest elder, it's also a matter of the entire sect. Please wait in the guest hall, I'll go and report to my highest elder right now." After saying that, Lu Pingan did not dare to delay any further. He gestured to the other Golden Core experts to entertain Bing Wuching, while he hurried to the top of the mountain. Chapter 53-57. These days, they had been in a stalemate. Lu Pingan was in charge of the negotiation. Seeing that Chen Dongqing's breath was getting weaker day by day, Lu Pingan became more and more anxious. It could be said that he was looking forward to this personal disciple who could take on a big responsibility to bring him good news as soon as possible. Unfortunately, this time his hope was obviously going to fail again. Reporting to Master, not yet. Lu Pingan was a little embarrassed. Not only did Chen Jiao have high hopes for him, but he was also ready to show his skills these days. After all, his direct opponent was Xianijia, who was almost the most unattractive person among all the high-level gold core stage cultivators in the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Whether in terms of strength, status, or shrewdness, Lu Pingan believed that he could at least leave the other party behind by 10 streets. However, he did not expect that such a sloppy and ordinary good guy would suddenly become an impervious old fox after sitting at the negotiating table. No matter what strategy he used, it would always be kicked back to his feet in the end. That was not all. The key was that Enchanting did not just kick the ball around. Every time, he was reasonable and eloquent, which made Lu Pingan unable to find any room to refute. Every time, he could only sigh. Enchanting, you can't judge a book by its cover. You're too slow. Qinjiu's eyes were somewhat unfathomable. Although it was said that there was no need to be suspicious of a person, and the other party was also his most successful pro-disciple, so there was nothing to be suspicious about. However, he was naturally suspicious, and after a long time, it was inevitable that he would have doubts. Moreover, from Lu Pingan's standpoint, there was indeed a motive in this regard. After all, if Qin Dongqing was really exhausted to death, Lu Pingan was likely to be the biggest beneficiary. Yes, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I will speed up the negotiation and buy time for Deputy Leader Qin. Lu Pingan was frightened by this sentence and quickly showed his loyalty. Tell me, what's wrong? Qinjiu glanced at him. At this time, although Lu Pingan was not seriously injured, he was unprecedentedly embarrassed. Looking at the whole green cloud sect in the North Island, there were very few people who could threaten him, an expert at the peak of the late Gold Core stage, unless Lin Yi took action himself. Yes, Bing Wuqing from the Snow Sword sect came to visit and asked to see Lin Yi. After I refused, she changed her request. She wants to see you, master. Lu Pingan said respectfully. Bing Wuqing. Hearing this, Qinjiu thought for a moment and vaguely had an impression of it. He casually said, isn't it just a young boy who just entered the Gold Core stage? Just send him away. Do you need to report such a trivial matter? That's what I thought in the beginning. But that won't do. He's a newly advanced original infant stage expert. I can't chase him away. Lu Pingan could only smile bitterly. What? Original soul stage? Even Qinjiu couldn't help but be shocked when he heard this. The birth of any new nascent soul old monster was a big event that could shake the entire immemorial martial arts world. Due to the great difficulty of breaking through to the nascent soul realm, it was impossible to achieve it without a few years' time. Normally, they would have received news of it in advance. How could this fellow succeed without a word? Moreover, Bing Wuqing was so young. Could it be a smokescreen? Seeing Qinjiu's doubts, Lu Pingan hurriedly said, it's true, this disciple and a few other elders have personally felt his aura. He is indeed a nascent soul expert, there is no doubt about this. Lead the way, Qinjiu said solemnly. There was no way Lu Pingan would lie to him about something like this. Since he had confirmed that the other party was a nascent soul old monster, he had to make a personal appearance. Otherwise, Lu Pingan wouldn't be able to handle it alone. He wasn't qualified. Very soon, Qinjiu appeared in front of Bing Wuqing. He stepped forward and chuckled. Everyone says that Bing Wuqing of the Snow Sword faction is a super genius that no one has ever seen before and will ever see again. I didn't quite believe it in the past, but today, I have no choice but to believe it. If I remember correctly, my young friend, Wuqing, is probably the youngest nascent soul expert in the history of the immemorial martial arts world. Congratulations. You flatter me. I'm not the youngest. The legendary figure of your faction who is known as the Great Emperor should be younger than me, right? Bing Wuqing asked seriously. Qinjiu's smile immediately became a little awkward. He had said those words of praise just to warm up a little. Who knew that the other party would be so unreasonable as to directly refute him to his face? She was indeed young. I'd like to pay a visit to the immemorial martial granduncle Lin Yi of your faction. Just now, he said that he needed you, the Grand Supreme Elder, to personally make a decision. I wonder if you can fulfill this small request of mine? Bing Wuqing went straight to the point. This. On the surface, he pretended to be hesitant, but in fact, Qinjiu couldn't help but start cursing in his heart. Bing Wuching was a hothead who didn't know the rules at all. Not only did she completely ignore the established rules of visiting, but even her tone was so stiff. How did this person suddenly become a nascent soul expert? However, cursing aside, Qin Jiao couldn't show it on his face. After all, the other party was an out-and-out nascent soul expert. Compared to her, even if he was a little stronger, he didn't dare to directly fall out with her. What if both of them were injured? Moreover, even if he could kill Bing Wuching on the spot, he would definitely be severely injured. But don't forget, other than Bing Wuching, there was another veteran nascent soul old monster in the Snow Sword faction. If he came looking for revenge, how was he going to deal with them? In the small immemorial underworld, every nascent soul old monster was equivalent to a nuclear weapon in the secular world. They definitely couldn't be attacked easily. Otherwise, a careless move could lead to a world war that wouldn't end until one side was wiped out. For every sect involved, that would be an unbearable disaster. You're the Grand Supreme Elder, are you going to say that you don't have this authority? Bing Wuching asked with a frown. Huh, my young friend, you must be joking. Of course I have this authority. However, it just so happens that Lin Yi is in seclusion at the Ascending Heaven Cliff right now. Even I can't rashly interrupt him. Otherwise, there might be unimaginable consequences. In my opinion, if my young friend really wants to see the immemorial martial granduncle, why don't you wait a little longer? Qin Jiao tried to beat around the bush. Wait? Bing Wuching raised her eyebrows. That's right. My young friend, you've never been to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. During this period of time, you can travel around and experience the local customs of the North Island. When the immemorial martial granduncle comes out of seclusion, I'll send someone to inform you immediately. What do you think, my young friend? Qin Jiao suggested. Chapter 53-58. Broadcast, follow, Qidian reading, and get the first-hand news of the 515 red packets. Students who haven't snatched red packets since the new year can now show their skills. In the eyes of an extremely pragmatic person like him, there was no such thing as sentimentality. He only cared about the pros and cons. As long as the pros outweighed the cons, he would act without hesitation. The reason why he didn't take any action now was because he hadn't figured out the situation yet, so he couldn't act rashly. After much persuasion, Bing Wuching was finally persuaded to leave. Of course, she didn't really leave, but was just temporarily stabilized. Qin Jiao even specifically asked Lu Pingan to arrange an extremely secluded residence for her, afraid that she would do something out of control if she interacted with the ordinary disciples. After all, the destructive power of an original infant stage expert was not to be underestimated. Keep a close eye on him. If he does anything, report to me immediately. Qin Jiao exhorted. Initially, Lin Yi was his greatest threat, but now, it had become Bing Wuching. After all, the latter was a true nascent soul expert, and she was an existence that could truly threaten him. How do I keep a close eye on him? Lu Pingan's face was bitter. It would be fine if she was a golden core stage expert, but she was an original infant stage expert who could easily flatten him with one hand. How could he keep a close eye on her? You don't have to keep an eye on his every move. Just make sure that the other disciples of our sect don't come into contact with him, especially not let him get close to Sky Cliff. Qin Jiao also knew that this request was a little too much, but it had to be done. He didn't know what the relationship between Bing Wuching and Lin Yi was, but neither of them was easy to deal with. If they really joined forces, even Qin Jiao would have a headache. Yes. Lu Pingan could only reluctantly agree. It was not very realistic for him to keep a close eye on Bing Wuching with his strength, but he could change his way of thinking and keep an eye on those suspicious people who might get close to Bing Wuching, such as Enchanting. Little did he know that when he and Qin Jiao were delaying Bing Wuching, Enchanting, who got wind of the news, had already gone to Sky Cliff and told Lin Yi about Bing Wuching's visit in full detail. Hee, not bad. Lin Yi smiled faintly after listening. Although Bing Wuching's quick advancement to the nascent soul realm was somewhat unexpected, he did not find it strange. After all, he was the one who had given her the supreme-grade golden elixir of condensing nascent soul realm. What he meant by not bad was actually the attitude that Bing Wuqing had displayed during this trip. She was showing her loyalty. Condensing the nascent soul so quickly is only not bad? Xinejie was dumbfounded. In the whole Green Cloud sect of the North Island, apart from Lin Yi, he was probably the one who knew Bing Wuqing the best. A year ago, she was at the early stage of Gold Core, just like him. But in the blink of an eye, she had become a Yuanying realm old weirdo. How could he bear this? I mean, his attitude is not bad. Lin Yi explained. Even though he had long known that Bing Wuqing was someone who knew how to adapt to circumstances, this fellow had not become arrogant at all after she had formed her nascent soul. She was actually so obedient, which was really rare. It was obvious that all those elixirs had not been wasted. He's one of us. Xinejie's eyes widened when he heard this. He had been wondering why Bing Wuqing had to come to see Lin Yi, but now, he suddenly understood. He looked at Lin Yi with even more awe. He could even tame a genius like Bing Wuqing. Granduncle was really unfathomable. That's right. Lin Yi nodded. Since Bing Wuqing had come to the North Island, there was no need to hide this kind of thing anymore. It was more meaningful to announce it openly. With such a powerful follower, not only could it greatly deter the enemies, but it could also improve their self-confidence and cohesion at the same time. It was killing two birds with one stone. Granduncle is mighty. As expected, Xinejie was very excited and sincerely admired Lin Yi. He felt lucky that he had bet on the right person. Since Lin Yi could even tame a Yuanying realm expert like Bing Wuqing, it would be a piece of cake for him to deal with Qin Jiu, who was also a Yuanying realm old weirdo. He wouldn't have to be so worried in the future. Lin Yi looked indifferent. At his level, it would be too degrading for him to be excited about such a small thing. Granduncle, what should we do next? Should I contact Bing Wuqing? Xinejie asked in high spirits. Do you think you can contact her? Lin Yi glanced at him. It seems a little difficult. Xinejie felt like a bucket of cold water was poured over his head. He could easily figure out that Lu Pingan would do everything possible to prevent him from getting in touch with Bing Wuqing. Moreover, he wasn't strong enough to force his way in. It was easy to talk about contacting Bing Wuqing, but it was very difficult to actually do it. It's not urgent. Don't be impatient. Lin Yi smiled. Although they had been in a stalemate during this period of time, strictly speaking, they had always been the ones who had the upper hand. Now that Bing Wuqing was here, it was even more so. Qin Jiu should be the one anxious now, not him, so there was no need to panic at all. They could just wait and see. All right. Xinejie was a little resentful. It was rare to have someone as powerful as Bing Wuqing here. He thought it was just the right time to wrestle with Qin Jiu. For a native of the small Jianghu world like him, the deterrence of a nascent soul-old monster was deep-rooted. Even though he had the upper hand in the situation before, he always felt frightened, and always felt that his side wasn't strong enough. Now that he finally had a nascent soul stage expert who was on par with him, his mood was completely different from before. Seeing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. He didn't expect that Xinejie, who had always been a good guy who only knew how to protect himself, would have a belligerent side. It was really unexpected. But then again, although the situation forced him to stand on the opposite side of Qin Jiu, Lin Yi actually didn't want to make a big fuss. After all, his relationship with the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island was not fake. It would be best if it could be resolved peacefully. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. Bing Wuqing had stayed in the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island for a few days. Because of Lu Pingan's deliberate arrangement, she rarely interacted with the ordinary disciples of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, and had no chance to directly contact Xinejie. But with her strength, if she really wanted to do something, Lu Pingan couldn't stop her at all. If it wasn't for the fact that she didn't want to fall out with Qin Jiao for the time being, Bing Wuqing would have already broken into climbing Heaven Cliff. Even if she chose not to move for the time being, it wasn't difficult for him to find out some news. After a few days, he had a general understanding of Lin Yi's situation. Judging from the current situation, although Lin Yi was trapped in climbing Heaven Cliff, he still had the upper hand in this confrontation with highest elder Qin Jiao. At least Qin Jiao didn't dare to do anything to him. However, Lin Yi also couldn't get out of the reaching heaven matrix. This was probably Qin Jiao's only chance to win. Chapter 53-59. Broadcast, follow, Qidian reading, and get the first-hand news of the 515 red packets. Students who haven't grabbed red packets since the new year can now show their skills. This result made Bing Wuqing feel a little more at ease. She had come all the way here in high spirits to show her loyalty to Lin Yi. If Lin Yi were to be killed by Qin Jiao, that old man, with his home advantage, that would be the end of her. However, although Lin Yi had the upper hand, it was not a solution to keep this stalemate. Bing Wuqing had already specially inquired about the one-step to heaven matrix, and she knew that this matrix was extremely mysterious, and even a nascent soul realm old monster might not be able to break out of it. Although Lin Yi was unfathomable, and no one could figure out his background, there was one thing that was certain, at least for now: this primordial spirit of his was far from the level of the nascent soul realm, and breaking out of the matrix would be as difficult as ascending to heaven. And if he didn't have the confidence to break the formation, this little initiative was just fleeting. Since he came to the Green Cloud sect in the North Island to show his loyalty, Bing Wuqing couldn't just wait and do nothing. If he didn't even get to see Lin Yi in the end, his trip would be in vain. Breaking into the Heaven Cliff by force was the worst option. Bing Wuqing didn't consider looking for Xianijia, because she didn't know if he was on Lin Yi's side. There was only one thing she could do, and that was to look for Qin Jiao. As an expert of the nascent soul stage, it wasn't difficult for Bing Wuqing to see Qin Jiao. If Lu Pingan dared to refuse, he could force Qin Jiao to show up with a simple threat. In fact, Lu Pingan didn't even need to be forced, because he had already asked Qin Jiao to come out. After all, he wasn't a fool. After his personal experience last time, Lu Pingan knew very well that he had no room to bargain with Bing Wuqing, because they weren't at the same level. No matter what she asked, he just had to do it obediently, and Qin Jiao would deal with it. Otherwise, if he really made a decision and annoyed Bing Wuqing, even Qin Jiao might not be able to protect him. After staying in my North Island Blue Cloud sect for a few days, are you used to it, Wuqing? Qin Jiao greeted him with a smile. It doesn't matter if I'm used to it or not. I'm here to meet your primordial Grand Master, not to sightsee. Bing Wuqing didn't give them any face as usual. Hee, little friend Wuqing, you really have a true temperament. You're still so straightforward with your words. Qin Jiao laughed awkwardly. Nascent soul realm old monsters were the highest existences in the immemorial martial world, and there was a set of established rules and regulations when interacting with each other. Unfortunately, these things did not work on Bing Wuqing at all. To put it bluntly, the other party did not even know the rules in this regard, so what could one say about her? I'm not good with words, please forgive me, Elder Qin. But there's something I'd like to ask again. When can I go to Heaven Ascending Cliff? Bing Wuqing asked again. Didn't I say it last time? It depends on when Grand Master Lin Yi comes out of seclusion. I don't know the exact relationship between little friend Wuqing and him, but he's the Grand Master of my primordial Blue Cloud sect after all, so I definitely have to think for his sake. I hope little friend Wuqing can forgive me for this. Qin Jiao put on a show of being considerate for Lin Yi. Is that so? But why did I hear the disciples of your North Island Blue Cloud sect talking in private, saying that Elder Chen and your Grand Master Lin Yi don't seem to be on good terms? Even your Qin family's most valued deputy sect leader Qin Dongcheng was beaten up by Lin Yi. Am I right? Bing Wuqing exposed him mercilessly. What? There's such a thing? Qin Jiao pretended to be confused and glared at Lu Pingan, who was beside him. Previously, He thought that this personal disciple of his was quite capable and could take on great responsibilities, but in the end, he couldn't even do such a small thing. He was also a good-for-nothing. Lu Pingan smiled bitterly. These days, he had been trying to think of ways to prevent the disciples of his sect from having contact with Bing Wuqing, but he couldn't stop the disciples from talking in private. The disciples of the Qin family's sect were fine, but the numerous local sects wouldn't be so obedient. With Bing Wuqing's ability, as long as someone talked about her, she would naturally know. This matter couldn't be blamed on him at all. But since Qin Jiao was glaring at him, Lu Pingan could only continue. He also pretended to be confused and said, "It can't be, right? Although Grand Supreme Elder and Grand Master haven't officially met, that's because Grand Master has been busy with seclusion ever since he arrived. They haven't even seen each other, so how could there be any conflict? Then what's the matter with Deputy Sect Leader Qin?" Bing Wuqing looked at the two's expressions. "Oh, Deputy Sect Leader Qin isn't here at the moment. He's out on official business, so those discussions you've heard should be nonsense. Those disciples often talk nonsense in private. Please don't laugh at them." Lu Pingan tried to fool him. Bing Wuqing looked straight into his eyes, and Lu Pingan didn't dare to meet her eyes at all. Slowly, she said, "You're lying." "Huh?" Lu Pingan was taken aback, but he quickly forced a smile and said, "Elder Bing, you must be joking. Everything I've said is absolutely true, and I'm not hiding anything." Bing Wuqing didn't say anything. She was very sure that the other party was lying. However, since the other party refused to admit it, there was no way she could expose him face to face, unless she could find a witness to confront him or find Qin Dongqing. Unfortunately, neither of these two options were realistic. Looks like everything is clear now. It's just some disciples gossiping. You don't have to take it too seriously, my young friend Wuqing. If there's any news about Grand Master Lin Yi, we'll definitely inform you immediately. Please don't be impatient, Qin Jiao finally stepped forward and said. At this point, Bing Wuqing naturally couldn't say anything more. She immediately turned and left. After Bing Wuqing left for a long time, Lu Pingan finally breathed a sigh of relief. He said worriedly, "Master, this Bing Wuqing isn't easy to fool. I'm worried that he'll stir up more trouble. The key is that he's in the nascent soul stage. I can't stop him even if I want to. What if he really does something out of line?" "What do you mean?" "Tell everyone to shut up. If anyone dares to gossip again, tell him to come and see me," Qin Jiao snorted coldly. "But what about Enchanting? Theoretically, no one in the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, from the top management of the Golden Core stage to the ordinary disciples, whether they were from the Qin family's faction or the local faction, dared to disobey the order personally from Qin Jiao, but Enchanting was an anomaly. This guy was obviously on Lin Yi's side. They were bound together for good or bad. How could he be frightened by Qin Jiao's order? "Humph, if he doesn't listen, you'll keep an eye on him." Qin Jiao's eyes turned sharp. If it weren't for the fact that Qin Dongqing was caught, and if it weren't for the fact that he was afraid that Qin Dongqing wouldn't be able to be saved after falling out with Lin Yi, he would have asked someone to get rid of this reckless Enchanting long ago. Chapter 5360. Latest news: tomorrow is 515, Qidian's anniversary celebration, the day with the most benefits. Apart from the gift bags and school bags, the 515 red packets must be searched. There's no reason not to snatch them. Set the alarm clock, yes. Lu Pingan's heart skipped a beat. He thought that he had disappointed Qin Jiao again and again. If he couldn't even handle such a small matter, there would be nothing left to say. However, it turned out that stopping Enchanting from getting close to Bing Wuqing was not a small matter, especially not a small matter. To be precise, it was not difficult to stop Enchanting from getting close to Bing Wuqing, but the key was, what if Bing Wuqing took the initiative to look for Enchanting? Bing Wuqing hadn't thought of this before, but after hearing the rumors, even an outsider could see that Enchanting was on Lin Yi's side. In this situation, if she wanted to get in touch with Lin Yi, the best way was to go through Enchanting other than to force her way through climbing Heaven Cliff. Lu Pingan couldn't stop them at all. He didn't dare to and couldn't stop them. He could only watch Bing Wuqing and Enchanting talk, unable to do anything. After hearing the news, Chen Jiu, the Grand Supreme Elder, finally couldn't sit still anymore. He frowned and said, "What's the relationship between Bing Wuqing and Lin Yi?" Just to see Lin Yi, she flew thousands of miles from Middle Island to North Island. She couldn't get rid of him no matter how many times she tried, and now she won't leave. Is there an end to this? Both he and Lu Pingan had probed the relationship between Bing Wuqing and Lin Yi during their previous 2 meetings. Unfortunately, Bing Wuqing's mouth was tight and she didn't reveal anything. "Master, we can't go on like this. It's too dangerous to let such an unstable factor stay here. We have to find a reason to persuade her to leave as soon as possible," Lu Pingan said with a bitter face. Facing a nascent soul cultivator like Bing Wuqing, he really didn't know what to do. He was completely led by the nose, and something would happen sooner or later. Do you think you can get rid of such a plague just because you want to? How could Chen Jiu not want to get rid of Bing Wuqing as soon as possible? But with Bing Wuqing's attitude, if he was not allowed to see Lin Yi, how could he possibly leave? He won't stop until he reaches his goal. If he doesn't see Lin Yi, it's unrealistic to let him leave just like that. "Master, why don't we just let him go to Ascending Heaven Cliff?" Lu Pingan suggested. "Humph, you are too naive. Do you think he will leave obediently after seeing Lin Yi? With the current situation, if he really has a good relationship with Lin Yi, wouldn't he stay to help Lin Yi and make us have one more powerful enemy?" Chen Jiu scoffed at this suggestion. Release Bing Wuqing to see Lin Yi? Unless he was out of his mind, he wouldn't do something so stupid. If that happened, there would only be one outcome. It would definitely not be Bing Wuqing retreating obediently, but Lin Yi would be like a tiger that had grown wings. One Lin Yi was enough to render him helpless. If Bing Wuqing, who was in the nascent soul stage, was added to the mix, how could he handle it? "Master, actually, I don't think it's impossible," Lu Pingan said meaningfully. Chen Jiu frowned. But seeing that his expression was firm, he motioned for him to continue. "Master, putting Bing Wuqing aside, our negotiation with Lin Yi has already reached a stalemate. Deputy Sect Leader Chen's health condition is deteriorating day by day. We really can't drag this on any longer. We need to find a way to break out of this stalemate as soon as possible, and this Bing Wuqing just happens to be a good way to break out of this stalemate," Lu Pingan said. "Be more specific." Chen Jiu's interest was immediately piqued. "Yes, since it's a negotiation, there will always be concessions and compromises. I think we can make a concession and let Bing Wuqing see Lin Yi, but on the condition that Lin Yi can cure Deputy Sect Leader Chen," Lu Pingan said. "Do you think Lin Yi will agree?" Chen Jiu said thoughtfully. "It depends on what he has in mind. Everyone knows that you're the stabilizing force of our Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Without your approval, no one can gain a foothold here. So if Lin Yi wants to gain a foothold in our Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, he'll have to reach a compromise with you in the end. In that case, as long as he's given a suitable way out, he'll definitely choose to concede," Lu Pingan analyzed. "But what if he has other intentions?" Chen Jiu frowned. "Since there's nothing left to say, then there's nothing more to say. No matter what, we can at least sound out the other party's attitude. In order to break out of this stalemate, we have to make the first move. What do you think, Master?" Lu Pingan suggested carefully. They were already in a passive position, and now, with the addition of Bing Wuqing, there was nothing more to say. Since they had no choice but to make the first move, they might as well be straightforward and sound out the other party's stance. Chen Jiu pondered for a moment. Given Chen Dongqing's current state, it was indeed inappropriate to delay any further. In the end, he could only nod and say, "Then let's do it this way. You go and talk to them, but you have to remember that our purpose is not just to sound them out. The most important thing is to find a way to get Bing Wuching away as soon as possible. As long as she's gone, everything else is our internal problem. We can talk about it however we want, and it's not impossible for me to meet Lin Yi in person. In other words, as long as they manage to get rid of Bing Wuching, a huge external threat, then Lin Yi would not be able to escape from his palm no matter how capable he was in the face of a supreme elder in the nascent soul realm. Understood. Lu Pingan immediately responded and left. Faced with Lu Pingan's concession this time, Xianijia was somewhat surprised and shocked. But after thinking about it, it made sense. After all, Bing Wuching, a master in the nascent soul realm, had come all the way here to help. If Qin Jiu continued to insist, they would be the ones to suffer in the end. This time, of course, Xianijia would not evade it like before. Instead, he brought Lu Pingan to Lin Yi and asked him to talk to Lin Yi face to face. Supreme Elder wants me to cure Chen Dongcheng? After listening to Lu Pingan's words, Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. Yes, you also know that sect leader Hong is not here now, and now deputy sect leader Chen is like this. There is no one in the entire Green Cloud sect who can take charge of the affairs, big or small. No matter what kind of differences there are between you and Supreme Elder, at the end of the day, you still have to think for the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, right? Such a big sect can't possibly have no one who can properly receive the guests from the outer gate, right? Lu Pingan said earnestly. What's the condition? Lin Yi asked casually. Supreme Elder said that as long as you can cure Deputy Sect Leader Chen, he can choose to take a step back and let Bing Wuching come here to see you, Lu Pingan said with a smile. That's it? Lin Yi glanced at him with a faint smile. Of course, the condition that Lu Pingan got from Qin Jiu was not just this. Chapter 5361. Latest news. Tomorrow was 515, Qidian's anniversary celebration, the day with the most benefits. Apart from the gift bags and school bags, this time's 515 red packets were definitely worth watching. There was no reason not to snatch the red packets. Set the alarm clock if it was just to let Bing Wuching come up. From Lin Yi's point of view, it was not attractive at all. However, this was a negotiation, and he could not show his bottom line right away. That would be too stupid. If this is the only condition, and you don't even have the least bit of sincerity, then there's no need to talk anymore. Elder Lu, please go back. Xianijia stood at the side and chimed in. Don't be anxious. Before I came here, the Grand Supreme Elder said that after Bing Wuching is sent away, he will personally appear and talk to you. When that time comes, he will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. What do you think? Lu Pingan quickly added. To Lin Yi, it was more advantageous for Qin Jiu to appear personally than for Bing Wuching to come up the mountain to meet him. This was because it was the only way he could prove his identity as the immemorial Grand Uncle Master, unless Qin Jiu turned against him. Of course, Lin Yi did not think too much of this. This was just Qin Jiu and Lu Pingan's one-sided wishful thinking. There's no proof, Lin Yi said lightly. Could it be that Grand Supreme Elder wants to make a written contract for you, Grand Supreme Elder? Lu Pingan frowned. Haha, rather than believe in a written contract, I'd rather believe in a ghost. How about this, let Bing Wuching come up to see me first, and we can talk about other things later. Lin Yi decided. This. Lu Pingan hesitated, then nodded and agreed. Okay, to show our sincerity, we'll take a step back first, but we'll wait for Grand Supreme Elder's reply next. His meaning was clear. If Lin Yi sent Bing Wuching away, then they could continue the next step of the negotiation. If not, then it would be equivalent to completely falling out, and there would be nothing to talk about. Fine. Lin Yi nodded. Even though he was trapped in the one-step to heaven formation and could not get out, he had no intention of leaving Bing Wuching behind as a helper. Compared to this side, Leng Leng, who was left in the Snow Sword faction of the Middle Island, needed the protection of Bing Wuching, a nascent soul expert, more. After all, there was still a huge hidden danger in the form of Xue Jianfeng. In addition, he had another consideration. He was afraid that Bing Wuqing would really fight with Chen Jiao on impulse. Although she was an expert of the Yuanying realm, she had just broken through and her foundation was not stable. If that happened, it would not only mean that she would completely fall out with the Green Cloud clan of the North Island, but Bing Wuqing would definitely be the one who would suffer losses. There would be no benefits. Lu Pingan was very efficient, and brought Bing Wuqing up in no time. Of course, Bing Wuqing did not have an identity token, so she could only stand outside the one-step to heaven matrix and talk to Lin Yi. Otherwise, he might not be able to get out after coming in. Boss Lin Yi, I'm relieved that you're fine. Bing Wuqing breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that Lin Yi was safe and sound. Even though she knew that Lin Yi would not be defeated so easily by Chen Jiao, she was still worried that she could not see Lin Yi for a long time. Now, she was finally relieved. Hee, what could happen to me? Lin Yi smiled. He noticed the way she addressed him. It was obvious that she had learned it from Wu Chen Tian and the others. It seemed that this arrogant immemorial prodigy had already recognized his own position. Their relationship was no longer one of mere coercion and exploitation. She had become his follower with sincerity. So what do you need me to do now? Help you break the matrix, or deal with Chen Jiao directly? Bing Wuqing did not have the habit of making small talk. Even if she wanted to express her loyalty, she was simple and direct. You don't need to do anything. Go back to the Snow Sword faction and look after Lang Lang for me. Just stay put for now, Lin Yi said. What about Xue Jianfeng? Bing Wuqing could not figure out what Lin Yi was thinking. Things were different now. When he came to the North Island, he had openly betrayed the center. Naturally, there was no need for him to continue feigning civility. If it was not for the fear of disrupting Lin Yi's plan, he would have killed Xue Jianfeng directly and not let him live. If he doesn't move, you don't move either. No matter what he and the center do, your priority is to ensure the safety of Lang Lang and yourself. You don't need to worry about anything else for now, Lin Yi instructed. Okay, I understand. Bing Wuqing understood. Even though Lin Yi did not reveal more, she had already understood what Lin Yi was thinking. If he didn't move for now, it meant that there would definitely be a big move with the center in the future. It was just that the time was not right yet. Oh, right. It's rare for you to come to the North Island. I can't let you make a wasted trip. As Lin Yi spoke, he called Xianijia, who was waiting at the side, and gave him 2 elixirs to pass to Bing Wuqing. Thank you, big boss. Bing Wuqing's eyes lit up instantly. Strictly speaking, the Supreme Grade Gathering Nascent Elixir was his main purpose for coming to the North Island this time. Even though it was a little too realistic and even despicable to say it out loud, it was undeniable that it was the truth. To put it nicely, a person like him was extremely rational, but to put it bluntly, he was actually a mercenary. He just wasn't as short-sighted as the others. Lin Yi was well aware of this, but he did not mind. Since he had become someone's boss, he had to have a corresponding vision and tolerance. As long as Bing Wuqing served him well, he would never choke her in the supply of elixirs. After all, as long as he could control her, the stronger Bing Wuqing was, the better it would be for him. Putting away the 2 Supreme Grade Gathering Nascent Elixirs, Bing Wuqing did not express her gratitude verbally. Instead, she solemnly bowed to Lin Yi, turned around and left. Since Lin Yi had asked him to bide his time and take care of Lang Lang, then he would do it. Obviously, there was no need for him to meddle in the troubles of the North Island. From the beginning, he had predicted that a mere Chen Jiao would not be a problem for Lin Yi. With 2 Supreme Grade Gathering Nascent Elixirs, if everything went well, she could advance 2 levels in a short period of time and become a middle-stage Nascent Soul expert. Bing Wuqing was looking forward to her future even more. Bing Wuqing left swiftly. She didn't bid farewell to anyone when she descended from the ascending cliff. She rode on her snow eagle and disappeared into the horizon. All right, it's time to get down to business after dragging it out for so long. Lin Yi stretched himself. Huh. Until now, Xianijia was still in a daze. The 2 pills that he had just passed to Gu Lingji were too shocking. He was still in a state of shock until now. Those were the legendary supreme grade gathering nascent elixirs. Before this, he was still very sure that Lin Yi was the Grand Master of his sect. Even if he was not, he must have a close relationship with the North Island's Green Cloud sect. But now, he was really doubting it. What kind of monster was he to give away the supreme grade gathering nascent elixirs so casually, and 2 at once? A small sect like the North Island's Green Cloud sect would not be able to accommodate such a big shot, right? You want the elixirs too? Lin Yi glanced at him. Xianijia did not know how to react at that moment. Chapter 5362. Wasn't that obvious? Who wouldn't want elixirs? Forget about the legendary elixirs like the gathering nascent elixir. He would be thankful to his ancestors for just 1 golden elixir. He had been stuck at the early stage of golden elixir all these years without making any progress. On the one hand, it was due to his innate aptitude, which was incomparable to a freak like Bing Wuqing, but on the other hand, he wasn't that bad. He was at least at the intermediate level, and the reason why he couldn't advance was because of the elixirs. What could he do if he couldn't get golden elixirs? Here. Lin Yi tossed a few golden elixirs to Xianijia. After a period of observation, Xianijia had gained Lin Yi's approval. Moreover, Xianijia was going to be entrusted with important tasks in the future. Therefore, it was reasonable to give him some elixirs to strengthen his strength. No matter what, the strength of an early-stage golden elixir was not enough. That. His dream came true without warning. Xianijia was at a loss for what to do. It took him a long time to catch the golden elixirs, and he said gratefully, "Thank you, Grand Master." "No need, you deserve it. You can go and call someone," Lin Yi said. "Call who?" Xianijia was stunned. Lu Pingan, of course. Now that Bing Wuqing has been sent away as they wished, it's almost time for a showdown. That Grand Elder's patience should be running out by now, right? Lin Yi said lightly. As a result, just as he finished speaking, there were people walking slowly towards climbing Heaven Cliff. One of them was Lu Pingan, who was carrying the unconscious Chen Dongxing on his back, and the old man walking in front of him was Grand Elder Chen Jiu. Just as Lin Yi expected, this Grand Elder's patience had long run out. In fact, even without the unexpected interlude of Bing Wuqing, he was already prepared to have a showdown with Lin Yi. After all, Chen Dongqing's current condition was not optimistic. When a person's primordial spirit was drained, their body would naturally begin to wither and even slowly die. Even powerful cultivators were no exception to this. Compared to ordinary people, the only difference was that their bodies were stronger and could last a little longer. There was no essential difference between the two. And now, Chen Dongqing was already on the brink of death. This unprecedented situation was something that even Chen Jiu could do nothing about. Once Chen Dongqing's body died, everything would be over. Even if his primordial spirit was still alive, it would only be a lonely soul, destined not to last long. The point was, how could the Chen family of North Island hand over such a big responsibility to a lone ghost? Without any greetings or words, Chen Jiu and Lu Pingan directly stepped into the one-step to heaven matrix. The intention of placing Chen Dongqing, whose breath was extremely weak, in front of Lin Yi was obvious. Although the Supreme Elder personally came, he didn't put on a big show this time. Apart from Lu Pingan, he didn't bring any other disciples. After all, from his point of view, the fewer people who knew about his meeting with Lin Yi, the better it would be for him. You should have a way to cure Dongqing, right? Chen Jiu looked Lin Yi up and down. The two had been at each other's throats for a long time, but this was the first time they'd met face to face. Lin Yi's youthfulness was far beyond his expectations. At first glance, he was sure that this guy was definitely not the Archean martial granduncle, but a real young man. Of course. Lin Yi nodded. Then let's start the treatment, Qinjiao said directly. Oh. Aren't you going to talk about the conditions with me? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows when he heard the words, and Xianijia on the side also curled his lips. Even if the other party was the high and mighty Supreme Elder, after confronting for so long, he didn't have much power in his heart. He didn't even have the most basic conditions, and he directly asked someone to cure Qindongqing. Was he treating people like fools? What conditions do you want? Qinjiao looked at Lin Yi with an inscrutable expression. Hee, I don't need any conditions. Just give me my identity token. That's all, Lin Yi said with a faint smile. This answer was not surprising. With the identity token, it was equivalent to receiving official recognition, including from the Supreme Elder. Lin Yi was the legitimate Archean martial granduncle. No one could question it anymore, and it was a matter of course. More importantly, with the identity token, he could freely enter and exit the ascending heaven cliff. The one step to heaven array would no longer be an obstacle that was difficult to overcome. For Lin Yi, this was the biggest benefit. If it was Lu Pingan, at this time, he would definitely use the excuse of sect leader Hong Zijuan's absence. But now Qinjiao was standing here. If the dignified Supreme Elder had to use a mere sect leader as an excuse, no matter how reasonable it sounded, after all, he would still be at a disadvantage. If this spread out, he would be laughed at. If you cure Dongqing, I will give you the identity token. Qinjiao's answer was straightforward. Although he had confirmed that Lin Yi was not the Archean martial granduncle, compared to Qindongqing's life, these were not important. Okay. Lin Yi's answer was also very straightforward. Previously, when Lu Pingan and Xianijia were their respective spokespersons, they were testing each other and wrangling with each other. After talking for so long, they still could not come to an agreement. Now that the two main characters personally came forward, the negotiation was a matter of a word. The process of treating Qindongqing was very simple. Qindongqing's primordial spirit, which was imprisoned in the space of the jade pendant, was released and returned to his physical body. However, the current Qindongqing's physical body was too weak. Even if his primordial spirit was intact, it could not easily recover in a short time. When the primordial spirit returned, the whole person was still in a half-dead state. The only difference from before was that there was a trace of indescribable temperament. Lu Pingan did not understand, but with Qinjiao's eyesight, it was easy to see the difference between the two. Previously, Qindongqing was a piece of rotten wood that was constantly rotting, and there was no cure for it. Now, although he still looked like a piece of rotten wood, there was a glimmer of vitality. Next, as long as he was nursed well, it would not take long for him to return to normal. Well, it's your turn to fulfill your promise, Supreme Elder. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. That's right. Qinjiao winked at Lu Pingan, signaling him to take the still unconscious Qindongqing away. After the two of them walked out of the range of the one step to heaven array, Qinjiao slowly said, "Before that, this old man hopes that you can answer my question honestly." Say it. Lin Yi's face did not show any abnormality. Chapter 53-63. Lin Yi looked at him calmly. After a while, he grinned without any sincerity. I've already told you, he's your martial granduncle. Humph, looks like I won't be able to hear the truth. Qinjiao's expression changed and his aura became extremely sharp. For the first time, he released the aura of a nascent soul cultivator without holding back. Xianijia was taken aback. Facing the opponent's imposing manner, it was extremely difficult for him, an expert in the early stage of gold core, to even stand there. If it wasn't for Lin Yi standing next to him, he might have knelt down on the spot. After all, the power and terror of a nascent soul old monster was deeply rooted in the ancient Jianghu. What? Is Grand Elder going to go back on his word? Lin Yi's expression was still the same. He was not moved by the other party's aura at all. In his eyes, the so-called Yuanying stage old monster's aura was actually just like that. There was really nothing to be surprised about. It's not that I'm going back on my word. It's just that as the old guy of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, I have to keep a close eye on this kind of thing. If I let some shady people in, I'll be criticized by others. Although Chinjio's tone was calm, his aura became more and more intense. It was obvious that he wasn't going to let this matter rest. To be precise, he didn't have this plan from the beginning. No matter whether Lin Yi, the primordial Uncle Master, was real or fake, he was destined to never let Lin Yi enter the Green Cloud sect of the North Island as he wished. After all, two tigers couldn't share one mountain. Apart from Chen Dongqing's concern, the other key reason why he didn't directly turn hostile for so long was that he didn't want to take risks before he figured out the strange means that Lin Yi had displayed before. Therefore, Chen Jiao had not been idle during this period of time. He had been searching for all sorts of information related to absorbing souls. Unfortunately, it was to no avail. This was not strange. Even if the primordial underworld had always focused on the cultivation of the primordial spirit, and there were all kinds of primordial spirit techniques, such as the soul reaping hand and the primordial spirit devouring technique were unheard of. After all, the strongest among them was only a nascent soul old monster. This was the limit of his level. So what if he researched more? Without information, it meant that he had no confidence. That was why Chinjiao had been patient. Until today, when his patience was completely exhausted. Of course, the unknown meant risks, but Chinjiao didn't think that he would really fall into the hands of a mere Lin Yi. At most, it would be a little troublesome. He was a nascent soul cultivator. Naturally, he had the arrogance of a nascent soul cultivator. At the end of the day, it's still the same thing. Burning the bridge after crossing the river. As a grand elder, you change your attitude pretty quickly. Lin Yi didn't show any anger on his face. He didn't expect the other party to talk to him about honesty. If he really foolishly believed the other party's character, there was only one explanation. He was out of his mind. You can say whatever you want. Since you've chosen to challenge me, you should have been prepared for this. Isn't that right? Chinjiao did not feel the slightest bit embarrassed. At his level, his face had long been honed to the point of perfection, so what was this? No wonder you're a nascent soul cultivator. You look like you're going to eat me alive. Very scary. Lin Yi said with a faint smile. You're about to die, but you're still quite stubborn. Chinjiao replied with a cold snort. Listening to the conversation between these two people, Xianijia on the side was completely motionless. The two big shots were ready to do it themselves. What should a small fry like him do? Should he stay and help or should he escape? In terms of helping, Xianijia knew that he couldn't help at all with his little strength. It would be good enough if he stayed and didn't help. But if he just ran away like this, not to mention that it would be hard to explain to Lin Yi, he was still a gold core stage elder after all. He was still a person who cared about his reputation. Glancing at Xianijia who was hesitating next to him, Chinjiao suddenly said, I heard that you also brought a few disciples from the secular world with good qualifications. If you don't want to get involved, let them hide first. Don't worry, as long as they don't make trouble in the future, I won't take revenge. I still have this little bit of tolerance. This was the truth. Chinjiao went back on his words to Lin Yi because Lin Yi had his weakness. Whether it was status or strength, Lin Yi had the potential to threaten him. To a certain extent, he could be considered as someone who was qualified to be his opponent. Of course, he could do anything at this time. But Ling Shan and the others were different. Although they were all Lin Yi's people, for a nascent soul cultivator like Chinjiao, it would be too narrow-minded to even care about these people. Now, not only House Chen of the North Island, even the entire Jadian of the North Island was in a state of no successor. As long as he killed Lin Yi, Ling Shan and the others would be a group of dragons without a leader. They wouldn't be a threat at all. Instead, they were all good prospects. The price was just to spend some time to train them. No need. Lin Yi's answer was straight to the point. In fact, until now, Ling Shan and the others hadn't shown themselves. They were all in their own rooms practicing in isolation, not paying attention to the outside world. Oh. Chinjiu couldn't help but be surprised. His lips curled into a mocking smile. You're so cruel to your own men? I've really underestimated you. What a character. The sky-climbing cliff was not a big place, and the area covered by the one-step to sky-climbing formation was even smaller. Even if it was a fight between two ordinary gold core experts, it could easily sweep everything away. Now, if it was a nascent soul-old monster like Chinjiu, he could easily destroy this place with just a wave of his hand. In other words, if these people, including Enchanting, stayed here, they would inevitably be implicated. With their strength, no one could leave this place alive. From Chinjiu's perspective, what Lin Yi did was equivalent to sentencing them to death. Cruel and merciless was absolutely appropriate. Cruel and merciless? Lin Yi smiled and looked at the nascent soul cultivator. I say, are you misunderstanding something, Grand Elder? Oh. Chinjiu paused. I never planned to fight with you. Even if we were to fight face to face, would at most make you follow in Chendongqing's footsteps. There's no need to go through so much effort. Lin Yi said seriously. What? Even Chinjiu couldn't help but be stunned by his tone. It was true that he still couldn't understand the strange method the other party used on Chendongqing, but he was a nascent soul-old monster. Did this brat think that the same method would be effective on a nascent soul-old monster? He was too naive. Chapter 53-64. Ha 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 ha. Interesting. Very interesting. Chinjiu reacted and laughed. His powerful momentum suddenly became more and more wild and fierce. He laughed loudly and said, if you have the ability, then come and have a try. As he spoke, Chinjiu took a light step forward. However, before he finished his step, his whole body swayed inexplicably, and then he had already crossed a distance of tens of feet and appeared directly behind Lin Yi. The top body movement of the blue cloud sect in the North Island, half-step jump. This was not the end. At this moment, Chinjiu's fingertip had already pointed at the back of Lin Yi's head. An extremely fierce energy chi instantly condensed into an invincible magic weapon and shot out. Instant kill. Enchanting, who was watching this scene from the side, suddenly had his heart in his throat. Half-step flip followed by instant kill, such an attack was absolutely fast and lethal. In the face of an unknown opponent like Lin Yi, Chinjiu, a nascent soul realm old monster, did not underestimate his opponent at all. He was going all out, as if the person standing in front of him was a Yuanying realm old monster from another sect, a strong enemy at the same level as him. Chinjiu's attack was indeed fast, but unfortunately, his opponent was Lin Yi. Even if he did not use the extremely fast body movement, he could easily avoid his instant kill in the state of half-primordial spirit. As expected, Lin Yi just swayed slightly and easily avoided the instant kill. Your strength is really not weak. No wonder you are so arrogant. But you can avoid one, I wonder if you can avoid 10. Chinjiu appeared above Lin Yi's head condescendingly. At this moment, a powerful finger strength was shot out from each of his fingertips. It was the ultimate version of instant kill, 10 consecutive finger kill. 10 finger strengths interweaved into a dense killing net, completely covering Lin Yi, leaving him nowhere to hide. Hee, you are quite confident, aren't you? Lin Yi's voice then sounded above his head. How could it be? Chinjiu suddenly turned pale with fright. He had clearly locked the position of Lin Yi with his divine consciousness. No matter how fast the opponent was, it was impossible for him to escape unscathed. How could he suddenly appear above him? What the hell was this? It was only at this moment that the nascent soul stage old monster suddenly reacted. Although he looked no different from an ordinary person, he was still a primordial spirit. Chinjiu's reaction was fast. He wanted to get rid of it the moment he realized something was wrong. Unfortunately, he was still too slow. An invisible giant black hand had already enveloped his head. Qinzhou's eyes quickly became empty in a short period of time, and then became completely lifeless. He then collapsed to the ground and no longer moved. The situation was exactly the same as Chen Dongqing before. Xinejie was dumbfounded. He was speechless for a long time. From his point of view as a bystander, this pinnacle battle really came abruptly, but it ended even more abruptly. In his expectation, even if Lin Yi was really an extraordinary existence, in order to kill a Yuanying stage-old monster, he would at least have to go through a bitter battle. How could he kill him just like that? Was this still a powerful Yuanying stage-old monster? What are you waiting for? Drag him out. Lin Yi glanced at him and ordered. Drag him out? Xinejie pointed at Qinzhou on the ground with trepidation. Even if he was unconscious at the moment, he was still a superior Grand Elder. He was a Yuanying stage-old monster who stood at the top of the small Jianghu in the primitive times. Since when could such an existence receive such treatment? What else can I do? Stay here and get moldy? Lin Yi had a strange look on his face. He seemed to be pointing at something and said, "You know what to do next, right?" What to do? Xinejie was still at a loss. Everything that happened today was too sudden. He was not mentally prepared at all. Lin Yi did not tell him anything about how to deal with it. He did not even know what to do at this time. Grand Elder was killed, and there is no news from the leader. Isn't it obvious what to do next? Of course, it's to take over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. It's rare for there to be such a big power vacuum. Don't tell me you want someone else to take over the power vacuum? Lin Yi looked at him and said. Before he came to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, he actually had no idea about the power inside the sect. The reason why he came to this point was that he was forced by the situation. If it were not for Qinzhou and Chen Dongqing, Lin Yi would not mind getting along with them peacefully. But now, even Qinzhou, the Grand Elder, had become like this. If he still did not take over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, it would be too hypocritical. No matter what. Since he planned to establish a foothold in the small Jianghu in the primitive times, the first thing was to smooth over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Instead of letting others take over, for Lin Yi, the best candidate to take over was naturally Xinejie. As for himself, of course, he could not do it himself. He had to be a strong backer behind Xinejie. Otherwise, it would be a big trouble to appease the public opinion. After all, he was an outsider. Take over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island? Do you want me to do it? Xinejie was completely stunned when he heard this. He was just an elder who ranked at the bottom of the early stage of Gold Core. He had never thought that he could defeat Qinzhou, the Grand Elder, nor had he thought about taking over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. He did not even dare to think about it. Are you afraid that no one will obey you? Lin Yi saw through his doubts at a glance. Although Xinejie was a good person who put his own safety first, he could tell from the fact that he turned to Lin Yi without hesitation at the last moment that he was not a good-for-nothing. Deep down in his heart, there was a huge ambition. Xinejie was speechless. Was there a need to ask this question? With his little strength, it was difficult for him to rope in a few allies. As for taking over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, was that even possible? What's there to hesitate about? Drag this guy out. Who dares to obey you? Lin Yi pouted and pointed at Qinzhou on the ground. That's right. Xinejie's eyes suddenly lit up. Of course, he was not persuasive alone, but the Grand Elder on the ground was enough to convince everyone. The saying, "the strong are respected," was not just an empty saying. Now that even the old monster in the Gathering Vitality realm was killed, who in the sect dared to be disobedient? Needless to say, the local factions had all kinds of complaints in the open and in the dark, but they did not dare to show it because of Grand Elder Qinzhou's tyranny. If someone could stand up and take down Qinzhou, even if they did not raise both hands to agree, most of them would not oppose it. After all, this was different from the invasion of foreign enemies. It was an internal struggle of the sect, an internal affair. Chapter 53-65. After all, the prestige of an old monster in the Yuanying realm was not just for show. They had the courage to go against Lin Yi before purely because they felt that he was just a swindler with no strength. To put it bluntly, the ignorant were fearless. In fact, after Chen Dongqing was beaten up, these people basically began to quiet down. The only one who really jumped up and down was Lu Pingan, and this was because he was negotiating for Chen Jiu's endorsement. Otherwise, even Lu Pingan would not dare to be so active. After all, no one was a fool. Everyone knew that the bird that sticks out will be shot. Knowing that Lin Yi was not to be trifled with, who would dare to jump up and down? And now, Lin Yi proved that he was not to be trifled with real means. The previous Chen Dongqing was just a small test, and Chen Jiu was the one he wanted to get rid of. The whole process was easy. Thinking of this, Enchanting could not help but be excited. Although taking over the Green Cloud sect of the North Island still felt a little unreal, with the support of a big tree like Lin Yi, it was not completely impossible. But can I really do it with my little strength? Enchanting was still not very confident. Now, with the example of the Grand Elder, the effect of killing the chicken to warn the monkey was absolutely great. As long as there was the strength of a middle-stage gold core realm, Enchanting believed that he could control the overall situation. But the problem was that the strength of an early-stage gold core realm was a little too weak. It's not enough, so I have to come out in person to control the situation. That's enough, Lin Yi said. You'll come out in person? Enchanting was shocked. Even Chen Jiu was easily beaten half to death. If Lin Yi came out in person, the deterrent effect would be obvious. Not to mention the high-level gold core realm and ordinary disciples in the sect, even another old monster in the Yuanying realm would have to think twice. But the problem was, could Lin Yi go out? Don't forget, this was still in the one-step to heaven formation. Even if Chen Jiu, the Grand Elder, was easily killed, it did not mean that Lin Yi could break out of the formation. This was completely different. The only way to break the one-step to heaven formation was to achieve 4 words, one step to heaven. Yes, so you can go and gather people. I'll be right there. Lin Yi smiled confidently. Then, all right. Enchanting nodded heavily. Since Lin Yi had said so, he naturally had no reason to doubt it. He immediately dragged the unconscious Chen Jiu out. He watched Enchanting leave. Lin Yi closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then, he slowly stretched his hand forward until he touched the invisible barrier. The corners of his mouth curled up. One step to heaven array. After studying it for so long, should be able to get out, right? During this period of time, Lin Yi's efforts were not limited to cultivating his spirit power and the soul-hooking hand. How to break through the one-step to heaven matrix had always been one of the biggest problems in front of him. After all, he had never expected Chen Jiu and the others to obediently hand over their identity tokens. Of course, it was okay if they really couldn't break through. Now that the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island was leaderless, it shouldn't be too difficult for Enchanting to find a way to get an identity token. However, it was rare to encounter such a mysterious formation. If he couldn't break through by himself, but was forced to take the back door, would he still be Lin Yi? In theory, the only person who could really break through the one-step to heaven matrix was the legendary figure of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, who was called the Great Emperor. After all, this was the formation he set up himself. Other than that, no one else had ever heard of it. According to Enchanting, even a Yuanying realm old monster like Chen Jiu had never really broken through the one-step to heaven matrix. He had never really broken through the one-step to heaven matrix, and he rarely made such an attempt, because that was the domain of legendary figures. But now, Lin Yi was finally going to be the first person to try it. His fingertips touched the formation. In an instant, Lin Yi once again felt that mysterious feeling of being so close yet so far away. After this period of continuous fumbling, he wasn't unfamiliar with this feeling at all. In order to cross this barrier that was so close yet so far away, he'd thought of no less than 100 methods, but all of them had failed in the end. It wasn't entirely a problem of thinking. The main shackle was actually the strength itself. If one didn't have the strength beyond the Yuanian realm, it was impossible to break through the one-step to heaven matrix. This was probably the original intention of the legendary Great Emperor when he set up the one-step to heaven matrix. Originally, even if Lin Yi realized this, he would be helpless. However, because of the large amount of divine sense grassroot, regardless of the strength of the primordial spirit body, his primordial spirit was already a level higher than when he first came to the small ancient Jianghu. In terms of level alone, it had even recovered to the level of the original body on the Heaven Stage Island, a real mysterious ascension stage. If not, the power of his soul-hooking hand would not suddenly become so strong, and even a Yuanian realm old monster like Qin Jiao could easily deal with it. For the small ancient Jianghu, which was used to the peak of the Yuanian realm, the current Lin Yi was undoubtedly a monster, a terrible monster who could easily pierce through the entire ceiling. With one step, Lin Yi instantly switched from the primordial spirit body to the primordial spirit form, and then quickly condensed into a very thin and long primordial spirit thread. If the onlookers had enough eyesight, they would find that this form was almost the same as when the primordial spirit projection was used. That's right, this was the countermeasure that Lin Yi came up with. Although the one-step to heaven line was mysterious, but after all, it was not comparable to the real cross-realm projection. The difficulty of this did not lie in whether the primordial spirit projection could cross the one-step to heaven line, but whether Lin Yi could successfully cast the imitation version of the primordial spirit projection. Even if it was just a simple imitation, even if the effect was only 1% or even 1,000th of the original, the difficulty of this was not trivial. One must know that the primordial spirit projection could only be successful by relying on a special formation, but now it was purely relying on Lin Yi himself. This level of difficulty was something that only Lin Yi himself could understand. One moment in reality, but to Lin Yi, it felt like a long time had passed. The next moment, an almost undetectable primordial spirit thread appeared on the other side of the formation, and it grew at a speed visible to the naked eye, slowly condensing into Lin Yi's silhouette. One step to heaven, achieved. "Boss, are we leaving?" Qintian's voice came from behind. Lingshan and the others poked their heads out as well, all of them looking excited. While the battle between Lin Yi and Qin Jiao didn't take much effort, and they didn't make much noise, it would be a lie to say that they didn't notice anything at all. They were training in isolation on the surface, but they were actually eavesdropping. Chapter 53-66. Okay. The crowd cheered and followed him. Dong! 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 The deep sound of the ancient bell spread all over Mount Qingyun. All the people of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island, from the elders in the Gold Core stage to the ordinary disciples, changed their faces when they heard the bell. They stopped what they were doing and quickly gathered in the main hall from all directions. Something big must happen when the Green Cloud bell rang. Everyone must gather as soon as possible. This was the rule of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. What happened? The group of pupils looked at each other. If there was no major change, the Green Cloud bell would not be easily rung. Could it be that something major had happened? Qin Jiao and Lin Yi's personal negotiation was very secretive. Almost everyone was kept in the dark and didn't know what happened. Even Lu Pingan was very surprised. He didn't see the fight between Qin Jiao and Lin Yi. In fact, when Qin Jiao asked him to carry Qin Dongqing away, he had already left Dengtian Cliff first, so he didn't know what happened after that. It doesn't make sense. Master clearly said to deal with it coldly. Even if he killed Lin Yi, there is no need to ring the Green Cloud bell, right? Lu Pingan was confused. He still thought that Qin Jiao could easily kill Lin Yi. After all, he was a real Yuanian realm old monster. How could he lose to a primordial spirit of unknown origin? Lu Pingon didn't understand, and the others were even more confused. When they saw the figure standing on the side of the green cloud bell, they were even more surprised. Enchanting, what the hell are you doing? Lu Pingon suddenly frowned. The rest of the Gold Core stage seniors were also dissatisfied. The green cloud bell was not something that anyone could touch. At least, it had to be at the level of the deputy head. Enchanting, who was at the bottom of the ranking, was not qualified to touch it at all. If it was in the past, Enchanting would have been scared to the point that his legs were weak when he was surrounded by so many people. Today, although he was still a little nervous, he didn't panic at all. After all, he knew better than anyone that from today on, it was a new era of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. I didn't do anything. Because there is an emergency, I rang the Green Cloud bell to gather everyone, Enchanting said calmly. Do you think you're qualified? Don't you think too highly of yourself? A Golden Core stage elder from the Qin clan snorted disdainfully. Enchanting, don't tell me you don't know the crime of ringing the Emerald Cloud bell without permission? Lu Pingon sneered, and then added, speaking of which, what kind of urgent matter could you have? Could it be that the archaic martial granduncle died? He had long believed that Lin Yi would die in Qinzhou's hands, so Lu Pingon's words were much more unscrupulous than before. No way. Isn't that impostor imprisoned on the ascending heaven cliff? She can't just smash her head against the wall and die, right? The bystanders deliberately echoed. The higher-ups and disciples of other local sects looked at each other. Recently, Enchanting had been trying to rope them in, but there were only a few who responded. Apart from being afraid of the Grand Supreme Elder's power, there was another rumor that made them waver. That archaic martial granduncle seemed to be an impostor. Enchanting glanced at them, cleared his throat and said, as for whether archaic martial granduncle Lin Yi is an impostor, there will be no more suspense from today onwards. Oh. Is it because he's dead? Lu Pingon curled his lips indifferently. In his eyes, Lin Yi was now a dead man. Everyone was looking at Enchanting, but he grinned and pointed to an empty space beside the green cloud bell. There was a piece of white cloth covering it, and there was a human figure under the white cloth. He's really dead. Lu Pingon was even more certain now. He believed that Lin Yi's body must be under the white cloth, because only a dead body could be taken out of the one step to heaven matrix. You can say that. Enchanting smiled faintly, then faced the crowd and said, I think it's necessary to explain to everyone about what happened at the heaven cliff today. Elder Lu, you won't stop me from saying it, right? Humph, what's there to say? Lu Pingon snorted coldly. Not knowing the truth, he was still trying to keep a low profile. He changed the topic and said, speaking of which, Enchanting, you're quite bold. It's just the death of an impostor of unknown origin. How dare you ring the green cloud bell to gather all the disciples? How should you be punished? But Enchanting paused for a moment, then said with a smile, what if the person lying here isn't archaic martial granduncle Lin Yi? What do you mean? Lu Pingon did not react for a moment. What I mean is. Enchanting suddenly moved forward and lifted the white cloth. When they saw the face of the person lying on the ground, everyone was shocked. As for Lu Pingon, his face turned pale and he almost fainted on the spot. Now that it's the Grand Supreme Elder who's in trouble, it shouldn't be too much for me to ring the green cloud bell, right? Enchanting said calmly. No one said anything, because they couldn't speak, because their jaws were on the floor. After a long time, Lu Pingon's stuttering voice was heard, How? How could this be? The person lying on the ground was not Lin Yi, but Qinzhou. How could this be? No way. Could it be that nascent soul realm old monsters from other sects are here? Those who did not know the reason were still shocked. In their minds, only nascent soul realm old monsters could defeat nascent soul realm old monsters, such as Bing Wuching from Snow Sword sect who just left not long ago. No, the Grand Supreme Elder questioned the identity of archaic Martial Granduncle Lin Yi, so he was beaten up by archaic Martial Granduncle Lin Yi. It's as simple as that, Xianijia said lightly. After that, the whole place fell into dead silence again. The Grand Supreme Elder was beaten up. This would definitely be a big joke in the past, but at this moment, no one could laugh because Qinzhou was lying in front of them. This was an ironclad fact. Even so, the crowd still felt that the scene in front of them was too unbelievable. Could it be an illusion? Deceiving so many people with an illusion was undoubtedly a fantasy story, but killing Qinzhou, a nascent soul realm old monster, without making a sound was also a fantasy story. The credibility of the two was not much different to the crowd. Chapter 53-67. Lu Pingan stared blankly at Qinzhou on the ground, as if he didn't feel anything. The other elders and disciples of the Qin family faction were also at a loss. Below Grand Elder Qinzhou, except for the deputy head Qin Dongqing, Lu Pingan's position was the highest. At this moment, even he was stunned, let alone the others. The silence of Lu Pingan and the others finally gave all the other elders and disciples a clear signal. They all showed strange excitement on their faces. This meant that the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island would usher in a new era from today. A new era was not good news for the Qin family faction, which had been used to being superior. But for the local faction, which had more people, it was undoubtedly a sign of a turnaround. Before this, they had all witnessed Xianjia's efforts to build momentum. However, the effect was negligible. After all, a primordial Grand Uncle Master of unknown origin could overpower Supreme Elder Qinzhou. Those who would believe in such a ridiculous story were basically out of their minds. But now, they finally knew that Xianjia was not brainless, but they were just frogs in a well. Xianjia took in everyone's expressions. To be honest, his legs were still trembling until just now. But now, after seeing everyone's different expressions, he suddenly felt at ease. Although the people of the Qin family faction were hostile, they were obviously stunned. They were like a group of dragons without a leader in a short period of time. It was destined that they would not make any big trouble. As for Lu Pingan, this guy wanted to raise his arm and call for help. Unfortunately, he was Qinzhou's pro-disciple, but not a real member of the Qin family faction. This was a natural shackle that could not be overcome. He was still far from being able to call for help. As for the local faction, because there was no news from the head Hong Zijuan, they were now like a group of dragons without a leader. The key point was that they were not hostile to Lin Yi, who could overwhelm Grand Elder. At this moment, they were all full of awe. Even if there were a few people with ulterior motives, they dared not jump out to challenge Xianjia before they figured out the situation. It was the wisest choice to wait and see. Very well, now that times have changed, some untimely rules should be changed. The North Island Blue Cloud sect belongs to everyone. From now on, Green Cloud sect of North Island, which is not a single sect, can't put one sect first in everything. Everyone has to follow the rules, and there will be no privilege. Xianjia seized the opportunity and said. As soon as he said that, many of the disciples of the local sects immediately cheered. If one were to say who had suffered the most from the Qin family's faction, it would be none other than them. Although there were not many people in the Qin family faction, they relied on the huge halo of Grand Elder Qinzhou. Over the years, as long as it involved good things such as cultivation resources, they would receive preferential treatment without exception. They got the meat, and the disciples of other local factions got the soup. Sometimes, they didn't even get the soup, so they didn't dare to say anything even though they were angry. Today, Xianjia called for the abolition of the privileges of the Qin family. This was undoubtedly a move to win the hearts of the people. It was simple, but extremely effective. I'd like to ask Elder Xian, which family do you mean by one? At this time, a voice suddenly interrupted the cheers of the crowd. Everyone's eyes suddenly focused on this person. After seeing the person clearly, Xianjia's pupils suddenly shrank. Qin Dongqing. His primordial spirit had left his body for too long, so much so that his body had shown signs of atrophy. Normally, it would take at least a month for him to fully recover. It was a miracle that Qin Dongqing could stand out at this time. Of course, it's the Qin family of North Island. Xinejia immediately responded tit for tat. Although he didn't have the slightest confidence to fight against Qin Dongqing, the deputy sect leader, now that Qin Jiu was killed by Lin Yi, what else did he have to be afraid of? Everyone from the Qin family's faction heard it, right? Times have changed. Even a small character like this who doesn't even count as a fart wants to ride on top of our heads. Do you agree? Qin Dongqing sneered and took the lead to provoke in public. Hearing this, Xinejia panicked. The reason why these people in the Qin family faction gave up before was that they were collectively confused. The main reason was that no one took the lead. Now that Qin Dongqing suddenly appeared, the situation would definitely go out of control. As expected, when Qin Dongqing took the lead to provoke, the other people in the Qin family faction all changed their expressions. Although they were afraid of Lin Yi, who could kill Qin Jiu, the person standing in front of them was just a good guy in the early stage of the Gold Core realm, Xinejia. What was there to be afraid of? Hey, you guys have to think carefully. What I just said was personally ordered by Grand Master Lin Yi. Are you sure you want to disobey him in public? Xinejia quickly brought up Lin Yi. Grand Master Lin Yi, right? We're so scared. Qin Dongqing deliberately pretended to be frightened, but then he ridiculed, yes, I admit that your Grand Master Lin Yi is indeed unfathomable, but is that useful? Come on, tell me, how is your Grand Master Lin Yi going to get out of the sky-reaching formation? This was why Qin Dongqing was able to stand up and challenge them. That's right, they didn't dare to face Lin Yi now, but wasn't there still the one step to heaven matrix blocking them? Since Lin Yi couldn't come out, what was there to be afraid of? This. Xinejia choked for a moment. In fact, he had thought about this, but Lin Yi gave the order in a hurry, and he was too excited, so he neglected it. Hee, you can't be thinking that you can secretly get him an identity token without us knowing, right? Qin Dongqing sneered. It would not be difficult for Xinejia to get an identity token for Lin Yi if there was no leader just now. But now that he was the vice leader, nothing could be done. Qin Dongqing sneered. The Supreme Elder had fallen, and there was no news from the leader. The person with the highest position was Qin Dongqing, the deputy leader. Most importantly, he was not just a deputy leader in name only. He was the leader of the Qin clan. Unless Lin Yi came in person, the others could only bow their heads in front of him. Xinejia was depressed. It was hard to stabilize the situation, but he did not expect this guy to wake up halfway. What should he do? What? Weren't you in the limelight just now? Elder Xian, it's not appropriate for you to give up so soon, right? That granduncle Lin Yi of yours is still waiting for your good news at the Sky Cliff. It's not good to let him wait anxiously like this, right? Qin Dongqing ridiculed him again and again. The others looked at each other. Xinejia was really far behind Qin Dongqing. In just a few words, the other party had taken control of the situation. Chapter 53-68. Especially in the current situation, if Xinejia directly confronted this guy, it would be a mess immediately. If these people from the Qin family really made a fuss, they might not listen to him even though there were many people in the local faction. Maybe they were waiting to see him make a fool of himself. The situation was getting out of control. At this time, a faint voice suddenly interrupted, Vice Leader Qin, who are you talking about? Qin Dongqing was still pretending to be calm, thinking that Lin Yi couldn't get out of the one step to heaven formation, so he still had a chance to turn the situation around. At this time, after hearing this voice, his legs suddenly went soft, and he almost fell to the ground. You. How did you get out? Qin Dongqing looked at Lin Yi and his people who were slowly approaching, and he was instantly covered in a cold sweat. He was definitely the one who had the deepest experience of the fear of Lin Yi. The others were just shocked that Lin Yi could actually kill an old monster in the Gathering Vitality realm, but he was the only one who had experienced it personally. You're curious? Lin Yi smiled and glanced at the others who were just as shocked. He said casually, I even took care of your Grand Elder with ease. Do you really believe that a mere one step to heaven formation can trap me? I didn't come out before because I was playing with you. Everyone fell silent. At this time, no one dared to look at Lin Yi, and this was the effect Lin Yi wanted. If he wanted to control the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, then what he had to do now was not to appease them, but to establish his power. From the moment Qin Jiao was killed, the rules of the whole Green Cloud sect of the North Island were destined to be remade, and this person could only be Lin Yi. What are you guys doing? Greek Grandmaster. Xianijia took the opportunity to give everyone a wink. Greetings, Grandmaster. All the people present immediately knelt down, from the elders in the Gold Core stage to the ordinary disciples. No one was an exception, whether it was the local faction or the Qin family's faction. Even Qin Dongqing and Lu Pingan, the two absolute henchmen of Qin Jiao, knelt down at this time. They had no choice, the situation was beyond their control. If they dared to disobey, Lin Yi absolutely wouldn't mind killing them again to warn others. Even Qin Jiao was killed, let alone the two of them. Lin Yi glanced at the two of them and felt a little pity in his heart. He really didn't intend to keep these two people. Although they weren't a threat to him, they were at the peak of the late stage of Jindan stage and the middle stage of Jindan stage. In addition, with the connections of the Qin family in the North Island, it would be more or less troublesome if they did something bad behind his back. It was a shame that the two were smart enough to stop causing trouble, not giving Lin Yi an excuse to deal with them. They didn't give Lin Yi an excuse to deal with them. Although he wanted to establish power and remake the rules, when there was no sufficient reason, even Lin Yi couldn't kill people casually. That would make the whole Green Cloud sect of the North Island panic, and it wouldn't end well. Well, get up. Lin Yi looked at the people kneeling on the ground. Thank you, Grandmaster. Everyone got up one after another, and all of them were in fear and trepidation. Today, Lin Yi was a terrible existence above Qin Jiao, the highest elder. They were nervous and frightened even in front of Qin Jiao, and naturally, they were even more nervous now. The most important thing was that they didn't know what kind of temper Lin Yi had. Was he kind and reasonable, or a bloodthirsty tyrant? If it was the former, it was good news for everyone, especially for the disciples of the local sections. But if it was the latter, it was hard to say whether it was a blessing or a curse. It was better to speak less before figuring out the situation. At this time, honest people wouldn't suffer losses. Let me tell you something. The North Island's Green Cloud sect is such a big sect that it can't be without a leader for a day. Now the highest elder is gone, and there's no news from the leader. We need someone to stand up and preside over the affairs. After all, I can't do it, can I? Lin Yi said. Everyone looked at each other, and their eyes involuntarily fell on Qin Dongqing. Logically speaking, he was the most qualified candidate. Qin Dongqing suddenly felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. He couldn't wait to hide now. What he feared most was being targeted by Lin Yi. How could he dare to jump out and fight for power at this time? Even if he wanted to die, he shouldn't do it this way. Well, the position of the leader can't be left vacant. Let's take this opportunity to change the leader. I suggest Xianijia. Lin Yi said directly. It was in the plan to let Xianijia preside over the affairs of the sect. Although it was a bit abrupt to bring it up rashly, and Xianijia's original status and strength were far from enough, with Lin Yi's current deterrent power, who dared to say no? Sure enough, the crowd did not dare to oppose him directly. However, their expressions were a little strange. Although Xianijia was an elder in the Gold Core stage, it was like ascending to heaven in a single bound when an elder ranked at the bottom of the ranking suddenly became the sect leader. No one objects. Then it's settled. Lin Yi did not want to talk nonsense with them at all. He simply made a decision. Anyway, with him suppressing them, no one dared to oppose. It would be fine when they got used to it. The crowd was speechless. The saying, "the strong are respected," was true. No matter what decision Lin Yi made, they would not dare to show it even if they were dissatisfied. Moreover, they were familiar with Xineg's character. Although they were dissatisfied, it was not a bad thing for most of them to let such a good guy take the position. They could reluctantly accept it. "Thank you, Grand Uncle Master. I will do my best and go through fire and water." Xineg suppressed the ecstasy in his heart and shed tears of gratitude. It was true that he was a good man who put his own safety before things went awry, but he was also an ambitious one. Of course, he would never have dreamed that he would one day become the leader of the sect. However, ambition would grow. "All right, then I'll leave the rest to you. If there's anything, look for me at Climbing Heaven Cliff." Lin Yi did not stay any longer. He only needed to show his face in front of everyone today to shock them. As for how to deal with the aftermath, it was Xineg's business. If Xineg could not even handle this well, it would mean that he was in a difficult position and he would have to find someone else. As expected, Xineg's performance did not disappoint Lin Yi. Although his strength was only at the early stage of the gold core stage, this good guy's ability to handle affairs was not to be underestimated. In just a few days, he had calmed the restless people and successfully gained the support of some of the local leaders and disciples. Of course, there was still a long way to go before he could really control the overall situation. However, it was a very gratifying step for Xineg. With the protection of Lin Yi, he would become the real leader of Green Cloud's sect in the North Island sooner or later. Chapter 53-69. He had been missing for half a year. Before that, Xineg hoped more than anyone else that the former head could come back to take charge of the situation. But now, everything was different. If Hong Zijuan came back, what should he do as the new head? Should he continue to be the head, or should he abdicate and return it to its rightful owner? If this matter was not handled well, the situation that Xineg tried so hard to stabilize might be on the verge of losing control again. If the local factions split because of this, and the Qin family's faction fanned the flames again, things might get out of hand. The one who had the power to decide who should be the head was not the disciples of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, but Sky Climbing Cliff. Is this Hong Zijuan? Lin Yi sized up the middle-aged man brought by Xineg. His face was fair and beardless, and he looked honest and refined. His gestures occasionally revealed the aura of a superior, but it was not obvious. Instead, there was a hint of haggard and disheveled. "Greetings, Grand Uncle Master." Hong Zijuan hurriedly bowed to Lin Yi. He did not act like a head at all in front of Lin Yi. He was not a fool. Lin Yi even killed Qin Jiu, the highest elder, without hesitation, let alone a weak head like him. Most importantly, things were different now. Nominally, Xineg had become the new head of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, and he was appointed by Lin Yi in public. It was a great risk for him to come back at this time. If Lin Yi and Xineg felt that he was an eyesore, he would not end up well. Although Xineg was a good person and Hong Zijuan had helped Xineg before, it was about the head's position. Even brothers would fight to the death. Of course, the final decision was not up to him and Xineg, but to Lin Yi. "You've been missing for so long. Where have you been?" Lin Yi looked at him and asked. "I'm ashamed to say that I've been hiding outside for the past half a year and dared not to come back. If I came back, I would be dead." Hong Zijuan smiled bitterly. "Why?" Lin Yi and Xineg looked at each other. As the head of a sect, Hong Zijuan's strength was certainly not weak. He was a real master in the peak of Gold Core. Moreover, he was in the territory of Green Cloud sect on the North Island. How could his life be in danger? "That's because the person who wanted to kill me was Grand Elder Qinjiu." If it wasn't for my mount desperately protecting me and delaying me for a moment, I would have been a dead man. Hong Zijuan still had a lingering fear when he talked about this matter today. No one would have thought that his own sect's Grand Elder would actually directly make a move against his own sect's head, and there was only one purpose, which was to pave the way for Qin Dongqing. No wonder we haven't heard from him for half a year. Lin Yi nodded. That made sense. Since Hong Zijuan had taken action, as long as Qin Jiu was there, Hong Zijuan wouldn't dare to come back to Green Cloud's sect in the North Island. That would be courting death. That was why he suddenly showed up at this time. After all, Qin Jiu had been killed by Lin Yi. For him, the biggest threat had disappeared. As the head of a sect, it was impossible for him to wander outside all the time. No matter what, he had to return to Green Cloud's sect in the North Island. As the head of a sect, I only cared about my own safety. It's a great dereliction of duty. Please punish me personally, Grand Uncle. Hong Zijuan respectfully took the initiative to ask for forgiveness, and his attitude was very proper. It's not necessary. It's pardonable. Lin Yi waved his hand indifferently, but the way he looked at Hong Zijuan was a little more playful. This guy clearly knew that Lin Yi let Xianijia take his position, but from his attitude at this moment, he didn't complain or resent at all. Instead, he seemed to have accepted it. Of course, Hong Zijuan didn't have the guts to question Lin Yi. It wasn't hard to understand. But it was a little interesting that he took the initiative to ask for forgiveness with such a proper attitude. Thank you for your understanding, Grand Uncle. But it's a fact that I haven't done anything in the past 6 months. As the head of a sect, I haven't been in contact with anyone for so long. I'm really not qualified to be the head of a sect, and I don't have the face to continue being the head of a sect. Therefore, this important task can only fall on the shoulders of sect leader Xian. Don't worry, Grand Uncle. I'll do my best to cooperate with you and Green Cloud sect in the North Island. I'll go through fire and water to protect you. Hong Zijuan hurriedly showed his loyalty. This guy was quite smart. Lin Yi suddenly understood why Hong Zijuan came. He knew that the matter was settled, and he didn't want to get himself killed for a sect leader's position that had already become a castle in the air. Therefore, he took the initiative to clarify himself. Apart from other things, this guy really knew how to adapt to circumstances. If that's the case, then how about this? You can be the vice head from now on. You have experience and strength. We still need your help on Xianijia's side in the future. I hope there will be no more factional disputes in Green Cloud sect in the North Island. I don't want to hear about anyone stirring up trouble. I have high hopes for both of you. Don't let me down. Lin Yi looked at the two of them and said, yes. Both of them were overjoyed. Xianijia was overjoyed because he had truly secured the position of the head. As for Hong Zijuan, it was already a great thing for him to get Lin Yi's approval. Moreover, although he lost the position of the head, at least he could be the vice head. This was already a pleasant surprise, and there was nothing to be dissatisfied about. Back then, he was bullied so miserably by Qinjiu. This in itself had already proved that Hong Zijuan wasn't a tough person. If Qinjiu didn't want his life, he would have chosen to swallow his anger. Now that it was Lin Yi who was even more terrifying, his choice to lower his head seemed unexpected, but in fact, it was completely reasonable. Very good. Lin Yi smiled. He had no choice but to push Xianijia into the position of the head, because he was only familiar with Xianijia in the whole Green Cloud sect in the North Island. He wouldn't rest assured if someone else took the position. However, it was a little unrealistic for Xianijia to really control the overall situation in a short period of time. Hong Zijuan came at the right time. By the way, Marshal Granduncle, there's one more thing I need to report to you. Xianijia paused and said with a bit of shame, Qin Dongqing and Lu Pingan both ran away, and they took Qinjiu's body with them. Now Qinjiu's primordial spirit had been trapped in the space of the jade pendant by Lin Yi, and the rest of his body was no different from a corpse to others. Got it. Lin Yi didn't comment on this. In his opinion, it wasn't entirely a bad thing. After all, Chen Dongsheng and Lu Pingan were more or less hidden dangers in the sect. As long as they were there, the Chen family's faction wouldn't completely disperse, and the fight between the factions would continue. However, once the two of them left, the Chen family's faction would be completely leaderless, and it would collapse on its own. Chapter 5370. Xianijia was a little worried at first, afraid that he would be punished for not doing his job well, but he didn't expect Lin Yi to be like this. He breathed out in relief. Alright, you guys go. The most important thing right now is to take control of the big picture. Lin Yi waved his hand. Yes. Xianijia and Hong Zijuan immediately left with high spirits. Heh, fate really is messing with people. These two used to be Hong Zijuan's boss, but now he's going to be Xianijia's lackey, and he's still accepting it so calmly. His personality is amazing. Chen Tian and the others laughed. Birds of a feather flock together. They're actually the same kind of people. Their personalities are soft, and they look like good people who only care about their own safety, but they're ambitious as well. They'll only jump out and bite people when they're cornered. Now that Lin Yi Bro has accepted them, of course, Hong Zijuan won't go looking for trouble. Ziyu said with a face that could see through people. Face isn't important, life is more important, Ling Shan nodded. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. You guys are quite good at reading people. Alright, stop slacking off here, go train hard. Alright, the group smiled. If it was their original temperament, they wouldn't have trained so diligently. However, Qin Jiao and the others had given them a direct lesson. If they weren't strong enough, they wouldn't be able to move an inch in this small world. They were all ambitious people, and they didn't want to live under Lin Yi's wings forever. After all, even if they couldn't keep up with Lin Yi's footsteps, they couldn't be a burden to Lin Yi. Central Island, K Luo Mountain. Since there were no sects stationed here, and there were wild spirit beasts, there were very few people within 10 miles. Unless it was some sect training or something like that, this place was basically a no-man's land. A giant eagle descended from the sky. This was the most symbolic flying spirit beast of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. It was a rare ferocious bird even in the small primitive Jianghu. Except for the sect leader, only the highest elder with a higher status could control it. On the back of this giant vulture was none other than Chen Dongsheng, Lu Pingan, and the unconscious Grand Supreme Elder Chen Jiao, who had secretly escaped. Since he chose to sneak out of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, in essence, it was no different from betraying the sect. In this way, it was clear that they couldn't stay on the North Island any longer. The other islands were too far away, and they weren't very familiar with them. Chen Dongsheng and Lu Pingan discussed for a long time and finally decided to escape to the Middle Island. The ungoverned K Luo Mountain was a ready-made foothold. Although the K Luo Mountain was dangerous. However, one of them was at the peak of the late stage of the Golden Core Realm, while the other was at the middle stage of the Golden Core Realm. As long as they were a little more cautious, they would be able to protect themselves. Old Lu, we have to figure out what to do next. After all, we can't really stay in this ravine all the time, right? Chen Dongqing frowned. He was from the Chen family of the North Island and had always been regarded as the successor. He was used to living in luxury since he was a child. Now he was forced to escape to the K Luo Mountain. It was okay for a day or two, but he couldn't endure it for a long time. But now the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island has fallen into the hands of Lin Yi. Both of us may have been accused of betraying the sect now. If we go out rashly and are targeted by people with ulterior motives, we'll be in big trouble. Lu Pingan also had a headache. No one would want to stay in this barren land, but the problem was that betraying the sect was a first-class felony in the small primitive Jianghu. Even if they walked out of the Middle Island, they would be beaten by everyone. What if they were encountered by the sects of the Middle Island that were on good terms with the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island? The consequences would be even more unimaginable. We still have to give it a try. We can't go on like this. If we really waste a few months, we won't be able to do anything. If it really takes a few months, just the cultivation resources for the two of us will be a big problem. Qin Dongqing shook his head. If it was an ordinary master of the foundation establishment stage, it would be possible to get some cultivation resources. But both of them were masters above the middle stage of the Gold Core realm. Almost all the cultivation resources of the Gold Core stage in the small primitive Jianghu were in the hands of various sects and families. Not to mention the sparsely populated Luo Mountain, it was difficult to buy them in the market. The path of cultivation was like rowing a boat against the current. After a long time, the strength of the two of them would inevitably decline, and then they would not be able to find peace even if they cried. How about? Lu Pingan pondered for a moment and suggested, let's simply go to another sect. With our strength, I believe that any of the primitive sects will be happy to accept us. At that time, we can spread the story of Lin Yi occupying the magpie's nest, which will inevitably attract the attention of the entire Primordial Alliance, and we will be in an invincible position. That sounds like a good idea. Qin Dongqing nodded in agreement. He was a master at the middle stage of the Gold Core realm, and Lu Pingan was a master at the peak of the late stage of the Gold Core realm. With such strength, if they went to any of the primitive sects, they would be treated well. Of course, the premise was that they could gain the trust of the other party. Fortunately, over the years, in order to help him rise, Chen Jiu often took him to various primitive sects to show his face. Among them, there were a few who were on good terms, so it should not be a big problem to go and seek refuge. So, let's go now. Lu Pingan looked at Qin Dongqing. Although his strength was higher, he still humbled himself in front of Qin Dongqing. After all, Chen Jiu was not really dead. If they could find a way to cure him, they would not have a hard time with the protection of this Yuanying realm old monster. There is one more question. What about my ancestor? We can't just go and seek refuge behind his back, can we? Qin Dongqing was still frowning. Chen Jiu was the greatest hope for him and Lu Pingan to turn things around. Unless it was confirmed that he was completely dead, it would be impossible to abandon him. Right now, how to settle him was a big problem. That's definitely not appropriate. Master's identity and strength are too sensitive. If we take him rashly, not to mention that few people dare to take us in, even if they do, it will inevitably give birth to all kinds of dirty ideas, which is not good. Lu Pingan shook his head. After all, if they really saved him, he would be a real Yuanying realm old monster. The Blue Cloud sect of the North Island had already staged a dove occupying a magpie's nest, and other primitive sects would not repeat the same mistake. In this case, we can only divide into two groups. One of us will go first, and the other will stay to take care of the ancestor. When everything is ready over there, we will find a way to secretly transfer the ancestor there. How about that? Qin Dongqing said. That's a way, but who will go and who will stay? Lu Pingan looked at Qin Dongqing. This was another problem. Although the two of them were now grasshoppers on the same rope, they could not be considered as confiding in each other. They did not know what kind of little schemes they had in their bellies. No matter who went and who stayed, there would always be various concerns. Chapter 53-71. Just then, a strange voice suddenly cut in. You two don't have to worry. As long as you join us, all your worries will not be a problem. Who's that? Qin Dongqing and Lu Pingan were shocked at the same time. Only then did they see several figures in the dense forest not far away. All of them were shrouded in black robes, looking extremely mysterious. Seeing this scene, the two of them suddenly felt their blood run cold. Although they were not nascent soul old monsters, their strength was not low. They did not expect that they would unknowingly fall into the encirclement of these people. It was incredible. Hee hee, you can call me mysterious man, the black-robed man's tone was profound. If Bing Wuching was here, she would know that this guy was the bespectacled professor. Mysterious man? What do you want? Qin Dongsheng and Lu Pingan looked at each other, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. The other party had concealed themselves very well. They could not see their strength for a while, but they were sure that since these people could surround the two of them without anyone noticing, their strength was definitely not weak. Nothing. Since you've come to our territory, as the host, we should come over and say hello, shouldn't we? The bespectacled professor smiled. Host? The two of them could not help but be stunned. The reason why they chose the Kei Luo mountain in the middle island as their first stop was because it was an ownerless land. Otherwise, they would not have rashly come in. When did such a group of mysterious hosts appear? We haven't been here for long, so it's normal that you haven't heard of us. After all, you're guests from the North Island, thousands of miles away. The bespectacled professor looked at the two surprised expressions and became more and more playful. How do you know we're from the North Island? Qin Dongsheng and Lu Pingan were shocked again. They had just missed the mention of the Blue Cloud sect from the North Island and they were talking just now. They did not say anything else at all. Could it be that these people had been guarding here from the beginning? Not only do I know that you're from the North Island, but I also know your identity. Qin Dongsheng, the deputy leader of the Blue Cloud sect from the North Island, Elder Lu Pingan, and the one on the ground is Highest Elder Qinjiu. Am I right? The bespectacled professor smiled. Who on earth are you? The two of them were even more shocked. Didn't I say it just now? You can call me mysterious man, the bespectacled doctor paused and then said, both of you are the victims of Lin Yi, and Lin Yi happens to be our enemy. It must be fate that you came all the way here to seek refuge. What? Do you also have a grudge with Lin Yi? The two of them were dumbfounded. They thought to themselves, what kind of people does Lin Yi have? He even has enemies in this godforsaken place. What a coincidence. Of course. Allow me to ask, do the two of you want to seek revenge on Lin Yi? Asked the bespectacled doctor. Qin Dongsheng and Lu Pingan looked at each other. Although they were full of fear towards the mysterious man in front of them, they still said truthfully, of course we want to, but we don't have the strength to do so. It's good that you have the heart. As for strength, as long as the two of you are willing to join us, you will soon have it, the bespectacled doctor persuaded. Join you? What do you mean? The two of them looked at each other. Until now, they were not even clear whether they were enemies or friends. How did they get to this point? The meaning is very clear. If the two of you join us, I can make you become old monsters in the Yuanying realm in a very short time. What do you think? The bespectacled doctor's words were shocking. Old monsters in the Yuanying realm. Hearing these words, Qin Dongsheng and Lu Pingan were completely shocked. When they came to their senses, they looked at each other as if they were looking at a monster. Was this guy's brain fried? Old monsters in the Yuanying realm were existences that could only be encountered by chance. With their qualifications, especially Qin Dongsheng, even if they were given a few hundred years, they would not be able to reach the threshold. You don't believe me? That's simple. Anyway, you have come here. Just stay and have a look. It won't be long before you understand that what I said is true. The bespectacled doctor suddenly threw 2 elixirs to the two of them and said, this is a gift for you too. Golden elixir? This was Qin Dongsheng and Lu Pingan's first reaction, but then they shook their heads and denied it. This was definitely not a golden elixir, it just looked a little similar at first glance. Of course, it is not an ordinary golden elixir, but a special improved version. As for the effect, it is at least 5 times more than an ordinary golden elixir. The bespectacled doctor laughed. The two of them listened with bright eyes, but after all, they did not know whether the other party was an enemy or a friend. This elixir did not feel ordinary. From the appearance alone, it was even far above an ordinary golden elixir. However, Who knew if it was poison? You still don't believe me? It's okay. There should be a way to test elixirs in this small ancient world. If you too are worried, you can go out and find someone to test it. I can wait. The bespectacled doctor loosened the reins. Thank you very much. Qin Dongqing and Lu Pingan nodded quickly. At this moment, their minds were completely focused on the elixir. They could not wait. After the bespectacled doctor left with his people, the two of them did not hesitate to go out on the vultures to find someone to test the elixir. Soon, the results came out. Although it was impossible to accurately identify what elixir it was certain that there was no poison in the two elixirs. They were very clean. This result was somewhat unexpected, but at the same time, it made the two of them overjoyed. Since it was not poison, it meant that there was no danger. In turn, it confirmed the mysterious man's words to a certain extent. The effect of this elixir was at least 5 times more than an ordinary golden elixir. Was this possible? Both of them had a bit of luck in their hearts. If this was the case, then they would be rich. They did not hesitate to find a place to start taking the elixir. 3 days later, the two of them rode the vultures back to Ke Luo Mountain. Sure enough, the bespectacled doctor was already waiting here with his people. How is it? Are you satisfied with the effect of the elixir? The bespectacled doctor smiled. Qin Dongsheng and Lu Pingan did not speak, but the momentum shown by the two of them at this moment was enough to explain everything. They were both in the golden elixir great perfection. In just 3 days, Lu Pingan broke through from the peak of the golden elixir late stage to the golden elixir great perfection was understandable, but Qin Dongsheng broke through from the golden elixir middle stage to the golden elixir great perfection, which was really incredible. Looking at the two of you, you should have discovered it, right? The bespectacled doctor continued to smile. Chapter 53-72. Just as the bespectacled doctor had said, they had already discovered the faintly discernible poisonous gas in their bodies. This horrifying discovery was enough to completely extinguish their little bit of joy. Even if they were beaten to death, they would never have thought that after they had already found an appraiser and the result was that there was clearly no poisonous substance in their bodies, there would be such a terrifying and troublesome poisonous gas left behind after eating it. Little did they know that this was a method that was integrated with the top technology of the secular world. It would be a miracle if it could be identified by the conventional appraisal methods of the ancient Jianghu. What do you want? Qin Dongsheng and Lu Pingan were a little panicked. Their strength had skyrocketed, but the price they had to pay was poisonous gas in their bodies. This was equivalent to selling themselves alive. No matter who it was, they would not be happy. They would only panic. Nothing much. Don't worry. Although the poisonous gas can't be eliminated, it won't break out in a short time. Even if it takes a long time, as long as you take the antidote regularly, it can be effectively suppressed. There won't be any problems. The bespectacled doctor said lightly. The two looked at each other. These words did not make them feel much more at ease. Instead, they became more frightened. The more stable the poison was, the more firmly the other party controlled it. What did this mysterious man want? Still worried? The bespectacled doctor looked at the two's expressions and smiled. He comforted them. My purpose has been stated from the beginning. We have a common enemy, so I need you two to join our organization. As for the strength of our organization, I believe there is no need to say more. You two should have a deep understanding of it. As long as you two cooperate well, I can help you become Yuanying stage-old monsters in a very short time. Qin Dongsheng and Lu Pingan had subconsciously regarded these words as a fantasy before, but now it was different. With the previous medicinal pills as a foundation, they could be said to believe it without a doubt. On one hand, there was the temptation of a Yuanying stage-old monster, and on the other hand, there was the threat of inexplicable poisonous gas. In the face of this carrot and stick, normal people would not have a second choice. Okay, I'll join. Chen Dongqing was the first to make a decision. I'll join too. Lu Pingan was not willing to be left behind. Very good. With the help of the two of you, it will be even more convenient for us to do things in the primordial underworld in the future. It's like adding wings to a tiger. Congratulations. The mysterious person was overjoyed when he heard this. Although these two people's surrender was completely within his expectation, it still made him very happy. After all, if the center really wanted to gain a foothold in the small Jianghu of the primordial era, it had to rely heavily on the local natives. These two people were the top executives of the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. Whether it was experience, connections, or influence, they were far from being comparable to ordinary people. Even if they had escaped from the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, they were still very useful. I will do my utmost and dedicate my life to you. Both of them were shrewd people. Since they had already reached this step, they naturally adjusted their mentality extremely quickly, making it impeccable. However, only they themselves knew what kind of thoughts they had in their hearts. Good. The two of you have just broken through, so you need to cultivate and stabilize your realm. After a while, I believe there will be good news, the bespectacled doctor said with a profound smile. What good news? Chen Dongqing and Lu Pingan looked at each other curiously. You'll know when the time comes. When saying this, the bespectacled doctor's eyes fell on Chen Jiu, who was unconscious. For him, the joining of Chen Dongqing and Lu Pingan was not the biggest gain. The biggest gain was the supreme elder of the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. The key to mass-producing nascent soul-old monsters in the future would fall on this guy. 3 months passed in a flash. Snow Sword School of the Middle Island. For Su Xiaodong, this was a special day, because her most valued pro-disciple, Leng Leng, had come out of seclusion. After a few months of seclusion cultivation, Leng Leng successfully crossed the barrier between the Foundation Establishment stage and the Gold Core stage. Now she was a real master in the early stage of the Gold Core stage. As a master, Su Xiaodong herself was only in the early stage of the Gold Core stage. Now she was actually caught up by her own disciple. According to the rules of the sect, they would be on equal footing in the future. This kind of thing would inevitably be a little awkward for others, but not for Su Xiaodong. Instead, she felt very proud. It had only been a mere 1.5 years' time, but Leng Leng had soared from an early-stage Foundation Establishment realm disciple to the early-stage Gold Core realm expert today. Even though such an amazing performance could not be compared to Xue Jianfeng, who had a cheat code, it was still considered as shocking. No matter who taught such a disciple, he or she would be extremely proud. Not only that, with Leng Leng's heaven-defying aptitude and the various elixirs given by Lin Yi, after crossing the huge barrier of the Gold Core stage, it was completely possible for her to return to the previous heaven-defying state of rapid breakthrough. It would take dozens or hundreds of years for others to go from the early stage of the Gold Core stage to the great perfection of the Gold Core stage, but for Leng Leng, even if she did not use the improved version of the elixirs with great side effects, it would not take that long. Perhaps in a few years, the Snow Sword School would have another great perfection of the Gold Core stage. However, before the master and disciple could have a few words, a familiar yet disgusting voice cut in. It was Xue Jianfeng. Yo, you've finally come out of isolation. It looks like you're already in the Gold Core stage. How rare. Xue Jianfeng walked towards the two with an evil smile on his face. It was obvious that he did not come with good intentions. Leng Leng and her master, Su Xiaodong, looked at each other and could not help but feel a little surprised. Ever since this fellow's legs were destroyed by Bing Wuqing in public, not long after that, his father, Xue Liping, sent him out to seek medical treatment. There was no news of him for a few months. They did not expect him to appear again today. There was something strange about this matter from the beginning. Logically speaking, with the injuries on his legs, the doctors in the Snow Sword School might be able to cure him. Even if they did not have the ability, they could at least give it a try. There was no need for him to go out to seek medical treatment, let alone stay out for a few months. Seeing that Lang Lang and Su Xiaodong did not speak, Xue Jianfeng did not mind. He walked closer and reached out his hand to touch Lang Lang's cheek. He continued with an evil smile, TSK, I haven't seen you for a few months. Junior sister, you've become more and more attractive. I can't help but feel sorry for you. Initially, I wanted to continue to pursue your past deeds, but I've changed my mind now. As long as you repent and mend your ways, I can let bygones be bygones. How about that? Repent and mend my ways? Lang Lang took a step back and avoided his lecherous hand. She had already advanced into the gold core stage. Even if she was only in the early stage of the gold core stage, she was at least at the same level as the other party. She would definitely not be able to defeat him, but she would not be helpless to the extent that she could only wait for death. Chapter 53-73. Lang Lang frowned and immediately prepared to use the ice prison mirror. The power of this move was enough to threaten beginner Golden Elixir Realm experts when she was in foundation building consummation. Now that she had advanced to beginner Golden Elixir Realm, its power had increased tenfold or even tenfold. It was enough to threaten any Golden Elixir Realm experts, including those in Gold Elixir Realm consummation. Especially since this was the Snow Sword faction, where she did not need to deal with Xue Jianfeng alone. Once they started fighting, they would quickly attract onlookers, and if things got out of hand, it would no longer be her problem. However, before Lang Lang could make her move, a bone-chilling coldness had already enveloped Xue Jianfeng. Bing Wuqing's voice followed, "Who are you talking about when you don't know what's good for you?" I knew it. When Lang Lang is in trouble, you, Lin Yi's damned lackey, would definitely jump out and bare your teeth. Hee, I was right. Not only was Xue Jianfeng not shocked, but the corner of his mouth curled into a smug and mocking smile, as if he had forgotten the painful lesson from last time. So you're saying that you came prepared? Bing Wuqing looked at him again. Although he did not make a move, nor did he release any terrifying aura, her intuition told her that he was no longer the same as before. Thinking of the few months that he had disappeared, anything was possible with the nature-defying skills of the core. Maybe he had already advanced to the nascent soul realm. Otherwise, with Xue Jianfeng's character of bullying the weak, he would never dare to come back to pick a fight at this time, and in such an open and above-board way. Thinking of this, Bing Wuqing suddenly understood. Provoking Lang Lang to lure her out on purpose, could it be that this guy wanted to seek revenge on her? What do you think? Xue Jianfeng did not hide it, and a ferocious look flashed across his eyes. Someone asked me to bring you a message. There is a price to pay for betrayal, and traitors will never have a good ending. I hope you are mentally prepared. Is that so? Bing Wuqing's expression did not change at all. It was needless to say who the person he was talking about was. From the day he attacked Xue Jianfeng, she had already been prepared for this. She was not afraid at all. It was true that the center was unfathomable, but did that mean that Lin Yi was weak? The fact that the higher-ups in the center had repeatedly instructed their subordinates not to provoke Lin Yi was proof of Lin Yi's fearsomeness. Bing Wuqing believed that Lin Yi and his backer must have the profound strength to contend with the center. This was the most logical explanation. Otherwise, he would not have joined Lin Yi's side so easily. This was a huge gamble, and a smart person like him would not bet easily. You seem to be fearless. Do you really think that you're invincible just because you've become a nascent soul cultivator? Do you think that no one can deal with you? Looking at his expression, Xue Jianfeng couldn't help but laugh. He looked at Bing Wuqing as if he was looking at a clown who was about to be avenged by him. So what you're trying to say is that you can deal with me? Bing Wuqing's lips curled into a grin. Of course. Otherwise, wouldn't all my saliva have been wasted? Xue Jianfeng's expression became more and more smug. However, before he could make a move, his body suddenly sank. A thick layer of ice suddenly covered his entire body. Not only was it difficult for him to move, but it was also impossible for him to even lift his hand. The merciless ice aura this time was much more powerful than before. Bing Wuqing's cultivation level had not improved in the past few months, and she had not taken the 2 supreme-grade golden nascent gathering pills that Lin Yi had given her. Everyone knew that more haste, less speed. However, some people could restrain themselves, while others could not. Bing Wuqing, who was an absolutely rational person, naturally belonged to the former category. In terms of direct effects alone, apart from the poisonous gas, the improved version of the core elixir was indeed much more powerful than ordinary elixirs. Even the supreme-grade elixirs that Lin Yi had personally refined could not compare to it. However, there was a huge drawback, and that was that it greatly depleted one's potential. The direct consequence of this was that it would be very difficult for one to achieve breakthroughs in the future, and one's foundation would be severely lacking. Although Bing Wuqing didn't rely on the core elixir to increase her strength like Shui Jianfeng, she had still taken it once. If it weren't for the fact that her natural endowment was so strong that it defied the natural order, no matter how many supreme-grade elixirs Lin Yi gave her, it would have been useless. To be honest, the fact that she was able to overcome the side effects of the core elixir in such a short period of time and successfully break through to the nascent soul realm was a result that shocked not only the outsiders, but even Lin Yi himself. However, no matter how strong and heaven-defying Bing Wuqing's natural endowments were, the side effects still existed. This was not obvious when she was in the nascent soul realm, but it gradually became apparent after she advanced to the nascent soul realm. The most direct manifestation was that it was no longer as easy to achieve breakthroughs as before. With her natural endowments, she could easily achieve breakthroughs with just a few elixirs in the past, but it was not realistic now. Of course, part of the reason was that it was more difficult to achieve breakthroughs in the nascent soul realm, but the side effects were still there. Fortunately, she had that half a stalk of divine knowledge grass as a foundation, which largely mitigated this side effect. Now that she had specially stabilized it for a few months, it could basically be considered to have offset the side effects. As her strength and realm became more stable, even though they were both in the early stage of the nascent soul realm, Bing Wuqing's real strength had increased a lot compared to a few months ago. Even if she were to face a more experienced early-stage nascent soul expert of the same level, she would only be stronger. Therefore, Shui Jianfeng was very confident when he returned this time. Bing Wuqing, who had expected this, was also very confident. With such insignificant skills, you have the nerve to repeat the same trick in front of me? Shui Jianfeng, who was trapped in the ice, suddenly snorted coldly. An extremely powerful burst of vital energy erupted from his body, and the ice instantly shattered to the ground. There was no longer any obstruction. Seeing this, the expressionless Bing Wuqing's eyes suddenly widened. This guy was not in the early stage of the nascent soul realm, but the peak of the early stage. Are you scared? Shui Jianfeng was very pleased with her shocked expression. He said proudly, "How about it? Do you feel a little regretful now?" Unfortunately, even if you regret it, it's too late. Once you took this step, there's no turning back. To be honest, I really didn't expect that a rational person like you, Bing Wuqing, would be so hot-headed that you would actually take this path of no return. Before I really make a move, why don't you share your thoughts? The peak of the early stage of the nascent soul realm was his greatest source of confidence. In these few months, he wasn't recuperating from his injuries. Instead, he was undergoing further strengthening and upgrading. The peak of the early stage of the nascent soul realm was the result of this strengthening and upgrading. Chapter 53-74. However, the key that restricted them was the sample. Not only did they need a ready-made sample source, but they also needed a strong sample recipient. In the beginning, the strongest sample in the secular world was a heaven-level paragon, so the center of the secular world could only produce heaven-level paragon experts. However, when the people of the ancient underworld appeared, foundation establishment and golden core experts were no longer a problem. Now that Chen Dongcheng and Lu Pingan had brought the half-dead Chen Jiu, it was only natural that they could produce nascent soul experts. Shui Jianfeng was the first test subject. As for why he could reach the peak of early-stage nascent soul, there was only one reason: Chen Jiu, who was the sample source, was at the peak of early-stage, nascent soul. Path of no return? Looks like you're really confident. Bing Wuqing's eyes narrowed into slits. This was a sign that he was serious. No matter how much she looked down on Shui Jianfeng, now that he had become a peak early-stage, nascent soul expert, he was definitely a formidable opponent. I'm a whole level stronger than you now. Why don't you give me a reason not to be confident? Shui Jianfeng grinned coldly and suddenly drew his sword. The speed of his sword was more than 100 times faster than when he was at Golden Core Paragon. At first glance, it looked like a beam of cold light, and in the next instant, it was already at Bing Wuqing's throat. No one could have imagined that Shui Jianfeng would so openly kill Bing Wuqing in broad daylight. One must know that even when Bing Wuqing had seized the opportunity to turn against him previously, it was only to punish him. This fellow was a classic example of a vile person who would seek revenge whenever he had a grudge. Cold and Su Xiaodong's eyelids twitched at the sight, and they immediately broke out in cold sweat for Bing Wuqing. However, this was a battle between nascent soul experts, and they were only at the early stage Golden Core experts, so they could not interfere at all. Fortunately, Shui Jianfeng's sword stopped at the last moment. It was not that he had deliberately withdrawn his strength, but that there was an additional layer of ice between the tip of his sword and Bing Wuqing's throat. What was different was that this layer of ice was an eerie black. Clang! With a crisp sound similar to metal colliding, Shui Jianfeng's sword was deflected by this layer of black ice, which shocked the arrogant Shui Jianfeng. He was now a peak early-stage nascent soul expert. How could he not break the defense of an early-stage nascent soul expert when he went all out? Especially when this layer of black ice appeared, it made people's hair stand on end. What kind of evil technique was this? Your level has indeed increased by quite a bit, but unfortunately, your strength has not increased by much. Your sword is a bit unsteady. Bing Wuqing said calmly. Not only was there not the slightest hint of panic in her expression, it was as if she had seen through her opponent's background with this sword strike and regained her confidence. Shui Jianfeng's attack was indeed fast, so fast that he couldn't even react in time. However, the tip of the sword began to drift in the end. This was a sign of an unstable realm and insufficient foundation. No matter how nature-defying the technique was, it was not surprising that Shui Jianfeng would suffer from this after forcefully turning him into an expert at the peak of the early nascent soul realm in such a short period of time. Otherwise, it would not have been easy for Bing Wuqing to block his sudden attack. Humph. Stop putting on an act. Although that was what he said, Shui Jianfeng began to feel a little diffident. All this while, Bing Wuqing had always been superior to him. Even though she was superior to him now, he actually did not have much confidence. After all, he was not a fool. He knew better than anyone the drawbacks of the improved elixirs, especially when he had just become an expert at the peak early stage nascent soul realm. Against Bing Wuqing, an expert at the early stage nascent soul realm, there was a risk that he would fail miserably. At the end of the day, Shui Jianfeng would always feel inferior in front of a true peerless genius like Bing Wuqing. It was just that he was deceiving himself and refused to admit it no matter what. Whether I'm putting on airs or not, we'll know once we fight. Bing Wuqing's tone was very unyielding. Unlike the shock she had shown just now, the way she looked at Shui Jianfeng now was filled with aggression, just like how a vicious wolf would look at an injured leopard. Before the leopard was injured, the vicious wolf might have retreated, but now that it had seen through the leopard, the tables had turned. Being stared at like that, Shui Jianfeng felt his scalp go numb for a moment, and he even took half a step back subconsciously. However, he quickly regained his senses and forced a cold laugh. Humph, you sure sound arrogant. Let's see if you have what it takes. Bing Wuqing did not speak, but answered him with her actions. A pitch-black ice sword appeared soundlessly in her hand, emitting an unparalleled mysterious aura. It seemed sacred and solemn, yet evil and ruthless at the same time. It was hard to fathom, but it made one's heart palpitate. Shui Jianfeng's heart skipped a beat when he saw this. Black ice again. Before today, he had never seen such a move from Bing Wuqing. Judging from the situation just now, this was obviously her trump card, and its power must be extraordinary. Just as they were about to fight, a group of people hurried over from afar, and Hong Qingyuan's voice rang out. Wait! Let's talk this out. It was not just sect leader Hong Qingyuan who had come. Great Elder Qi Qinxiu and the other members of the Elders Guild had arrived as well. They could not help but feel nervous. This was a battle between two nascent soul realm old monsters, and once they got serious, it would be a huge disaster for the entire Snow Sword sect. Not to mention that Xue Jianfeng and Bing Wuqing were both members of the Snow Sword sect. To a primordial sect, every nascent soul realm old monster was an invaluable asset. They did not want the Snow Sword sect to lose any of them for nothing, especially if both sides were to suffer heavy losses. Your reinforcements are here. Xue Jianfeng was already in a difficult position, and he was clearly frightened by Bing Wuqing's stance. Now that he had found a way out, he pretended to be magnanimous and said, considering that you and I are from the same sect, and considering the bigger picture, I'll remember what you did last time. You'd better know your place in front of me in the future. Pretentious. Bing Wuqing looked at him as if she was looking at an idiot, but she did not make a move forcefully. Her priority was to protect Cold Leng, and it would be detrimental to Cold Leng's safety if they really fought here. Hong Qingyuan and the others breathed a sigh of relief when they saw this. On one hand, they were still shocked by Xue Jianfeng's strength, and on the other hand, they were genuinely worried. If the two of them were to really fight without a care in the world, they would not even dare to stop them. If they dared to interfere in the battle between two nascent soul realm old monsters, even Hong Qingyuan, who was at Golden Core great perfection, would only end up as cannon fodder. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.